Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to a BRAP. Man, I can't believe it's April already. And what a way to start off the month of April, by the way. Look, Nintendo is the talk of the town right now. And we'll gonna probably dedicate this entire show to Nintendo. Before we do that, I want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Do me a quick favor. I am going to drop a link here in the chat. Please retweet the link, share it on your favorite social media platform, whether it's X, Twitter, or I don't know, what are the other ones out there? Facebook, Threads, TikTok, OnlyFans. Maybe not there, but anyhow, I do want to welcome returning guests. We got with us Creative Kofi. Kofi, what's going on, man? How are you?
How you doing, brother? You can hear me okay? My mic might have been a little quiet.
No, I can hear you loud and clear, sir. It's great to have you on, Kofi. Hey, man, it's got a lot to talk about, man. Just Nintendo just getting some people upset. It's just, I don't know. It's good. I will just, we'll get to this later. We are going to my initial impression of the price point of their games was a bit shocking to me, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show when the panel gets here. I believe we're supposed to have Nib joining us as well. Okay. And look, Mike S. Let's see, Mike S. He's in the UK. Pre-orders went live for both SKUs on a website here in the UK called Very. They rolled out a batch around 8:40 p.m. after emailing their customers, and I managed to snag one in the second batch. All right, okay. I was congratulations. I was hoping to get Gaming Forte on, because Forte's our retail expert. He does manage like multiple GameStops.
And now when he mentions 2 SKUs, that is one that's bundled with Mario Kart, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry, just checking.
Yeah. No, I mean, in general, this Nintendo news has been exciting and disappointment at the same time. In terms of specifically software that was shown and announced, I felt very encouraged. Just to name one highlight that was huge for me was seeing Donkey Kong Bonanza, and feeling really nostalgic when I see that title, because I really loved the Donkey Kong N64 game way back from, I think, 1999. It might have even been 2000. And it just felt like a traditional adventure game at the time. And Bonanza feels like that finally the franchise is taking the step that I've been looking for. So I loved that. I really, honestly, before I saw the whole price point situation, I was pretty excited to eventually buy a Switch. Other highlights, I think it's called, is it called the Duskborn? The From Software title?
Yeah, From Software, yeah.
I understand that this is a multiplayer Souls-like that has an overarching theme that reminds us of Bloodborne, but it seems to be a little bit more about the life of vampires, if that's fair to say. I thought that looked really cool. The multiplayer aspect isn't what usually gets me most excited for Souls games, but I wouldn't say I wouldn't buy it. I definitely think I would, find myself buying Duskborn. The multiplayer, the new Super Mario Kart obviously looks great, and I love Mario Kart 8. This one here feels like there's this open world experience, almost like Forza Horizon, where you
it does. Well, it's Mario Kart World, yeah. That's what, yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Mario Kart World.
Yeah,
and I really like that. It does seem like a great opportunity. I'm trying to stay positive right now, so I won't jump around. And
well, let's not spoil all the game.
I'm sorry.
No, we'll get to that here in a little bit. I'm just reading the live chat here. See some people saying MAGA tariffs tax perfect excuse to increase prices. I mean, maybe. I don't know if it's an excuse as much as it's just tariffs will impact consumers in different ways. Obviously, most of the time those tariffs are passed on to consumers.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know if that's. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know whether or not Nintendo did this in anticipation of tariffs, but maybe, or maybe these were the prices that they were going with from the get go. So, I mean, who knows? We don't
Speaking
know.
of the prices with multiple SKUs, the reason why I was asking about two SKUs is, I was just chatting briefly with Genki on X. I hate to call it that, but he mentioned that the Japanese exclusive Switch may not have Japanese credit card account restrictions. And the reason I bring this up is, as a person who imports games frequently, some of the roadblocks I've run into is proving that you are above the age of 18 for some of the Z rated games requires you to have a Japanese credit card, which is I mean, it's basically impossible if you're not a resident. And so my thought was they might have the entire payment system restriction built into this exclusive Switch, and that's why the price is so low. But according to Genki, at least as of right now, there doesn't seem to be any restriction like that. It just only supports Japanese language and will only be sold in Japan. So as far as I'm concerned, if I'm buying a Switch, that's the one I'm getting. I already use a Japanese account for my Switch. So if I can add points to it with, the points I can get online, too easy. I'll save that $100 or whatever the final price is. Have that thing flown over.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Speaking of Japanese games, I know you import many Japanese games. Anything in particular you're playing right now?
Yeah. So I just finished. I got about 60 hours into Visions of Mana. Visions of Mana is out in the United States. It came out last August. Of course, it's part of the Mana series that has been around since, was it Super Nintendo? So this latest entry I found to be wonderful. People might have heard that the developer behind this closed down, most likely due to lack of sales of this title, but man, is this thing an underrated gem. The, I think, greatest strength this game takes away is dungeon design. And the Mana series, I think, always has this kind of ethereal background around harnessing the elements, fire, ice, light, and dark. But it allows all of the elements in the world to truly craft how you play in combat and how you explore in dungeons, and it makes it extremely memorable. So I have to kind of get on a, I guess, stand up and yell about it because it has been so little recognized. But if you're looking for an action RPG with a beautiful story and really addictive action-based combat, you're gonna love it. One highlight I could say about the combat is each of the elements that you find in the world can help you in two ways. They can give you specific attack abilities, and they give you a tool that can help you in combat that is each unique from each other. For example, there's a water power that you can use. And when you have the water power and use its tool, you get what looks like a super soaker, almost like from Splatoon. And when you hit
Wait,
enemies
I'm
like that,
sorry. I'm sorry. Game
it, it, it,
logic.
it it's
Oh,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
yeah.
And when you hit the enemies, they become surrounded by a bubble, and you can do two things
Mm,
with the bubble. You can either use the bubble and destroy it, and the explosion of the water pressure does damage to all enemies around. Or if the bubble has no enemy in it, it will heal people around the bubble. And it adds this,
mhm.
and when you're shooting this super soaker, it goes into third person mode. Like, I mean, like over the shoulder, like you're literally playing a Splatoon game. And that's just one of the powers. I find that so um, unique in how they design the combat. Another combination could be the darkness power. The darkness power basically has like a grapple technique, almost something like I don't know, like Kratos in God of War or like Dante, where like you would reach out and grab an enemy and bring them up to you for an air combo. Um, and then you can get really nice with it where you have 5 characters to choose from that can equip these different elements. They all use different weapons. So there is, you know, 1,000 different combinations of, let's say, one character uses a scythe in darkness, or one character uses a great sword in darkness power, or another character uses fists and darkness power, and it's a completely different setup. Um, a very, very thoughtful combat, and the game cannot be talked about enough. So yeah, I just finished that game. I'm on to Dragon Quest 3 remake. Dragon Quest 3 is so far glorious. I mean, I'm
Is
only about
this
5.
is
Go ahead.
this the two? This is the 2D remake, right?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, how is that? Oh,
It's actually really good. I was playing that, locally, and then I was just doing remote play on my phone earlier this
mhm.
week. I love it, man. The exploration, the difficulty is still there. You still have to grind a bit. I saw some people complaining that they're getting their teeth knocked in by maybe adventuring a little fast, but that's how it's always been with the early Dragon Quest games. If you don't prep and weaken enemies with your spells, or use the right element against enemies, they'll take you out. And I just find it really great. I love that it's voice acted too. I never imagined these old school Dragon Quest games would be voice acted almost like not Bravely Default, but what's the Octopath Traveler, kind
Mhm.
of in that vein. So
In that vein, yeah. Yeah,
um,
it's funny. I actually still have the original NES cartridge
woo!
of Dragon Warrior.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Shout
Yeah,
out to
which
you.
yeah, and the box that it came in.
My
Um
gosh.
yeah, I can't believe I still have that. As I mean, for those who don't know, there's Dragon Warrior was Dragon Quest, but here in the US they called it Dragon Warrior for whatever reason. And God, when did that game that was 1988, I think.
Woo!
I don't
You tested my knowledge. It
Yeah, that
had
was
to
a
have
long
been after
time.
the first Final Fantasy, right? So that makes
Yeah. Yeah.
sense.
And yeah, but people, I mean, for those who don't, maybe the younger audience, I mean, it was really like Final Fantasy versus Dragon Quest. For Maybe remember Square versus Enix. I mean, you had like when I remember like people, at least here in the US, people would have their I remember they would see the arguments in the forums on GameStop. Um or GameSpot, I should say, not GameStop. GameSpot forums, people would argue about Square versus Enix, which one was the better company, which was the better series, things like that. So,
Yeah.
but that's awesome, man. I was oh, real quick before I forget, let me introduce oh wow. I I didn't know Nvidia CEO Jensen Hung was joining us today. What's going on,
Yeah,
Logic?
I thought it would be a good day to come out. Nvidia, Nintendo rolled out the red carpet for me.
Yeah, I mean they did. I was gonna I was actually gonna use a Gordon Gecko picture, but I decided not to do that. I thought people might, I don't know, think that I'm advocating for price increases. But no, welcome to the show, Logic. Great to see you as always.
Yeah, thanks, man. In the chat, I've swapped out my mic in this podcasting setup, so if my mic is too loud or too soft, just let me know in the chat.
No, you sound great, loud and clear. Um, so that's awesome, Kofi. So getting some gaming in, man, and
Yeah.
happy to hear that you're enjoying the Dragon. You said Dragon Quest 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. So, um, I eventually need, and I probably never will because I'm just so busy. Like to get back to Dragon Quest 11. I was playing it when it came on Game Pass. I always thought that was a nice get for Game Pass. I don't know how
It
many
was.
people actually played it, but I thought it was huge for them to have it on Game Pass.
Yeah, that finally got my best friend to play a Dragon Quest game. He's a huge Xbox guy, and when it went to Game Pass, to his credit, he actually went and finished it. So I
Oh,
knew
that's
it was.
awesome.
I
So
knew.
you said first time, right?
Yeah, I think he had not played a Dragon Quest game before that. Yeah, he
Oh,
might have
wow.
played
Okay.
8, but I don't think he did.
Yeah. All right, cool. Hey guys, next week, as a matter of fact, we get next Tuesday, South of Midnight comes out. Anyone here on the panel planning on playing it?
Which game?
South of Midnight by
South of
Compulsion
Midnight,
Games.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I will. I'll probably definitely be picking that up.
Yeah, I will too. I'll give it a quick playthrough on Game Pass. But yeah, it comes out next week, so I'm excited for that. Looking forward to playing it.
Oh dang, I forgot that came out next week. Yeah, I mean it looks great. Wow, I just got so much backlog. I may not get to that one until May.
I mean, there's a lot coming. A lot of games coming this month. I mean, just I mean, I'm trying to think of everything coming to April. Doesn't Doom come out this month as well?
Yeah, Doom's in
next
May.
month. Doom's in May. That's right. Oh, I you know what? I tell you what, I could not get over the mech in Doom. I don't know why. That when they showed that mech and then the ability to ride the dragon, which gave me Panzer Dragoon vibes. I'm like, yes, I'm there day one, just to play in the mech and ride a dragon.
Yeah, this month we get South of Midnight Expedition Clair Obscura Expedition 33, and then I think we get what you guys get. I think 3 Xbox games coming to PlayStation, or maybe 2. Forza Horizon 5, Indiana Jones. I think there's one more coming to. I think there's one more coming to PlayStation 5, or maybe The Last of Us. Is The Last of Us Part 2 remaster out this month?
I don't remember. Let me look that up real quick.
Which one?
The Last of Us Part 2.
Oh.
Or maybe I'm sorry, it's The Last of Us Part 2 going to PC, I think.
Yeah, the PC release. That sounds right actually for this month. And another remaster, which would be the Days Gone. Right? Days
Last
Gone
of Us remasters out.
Yes, I think the Days Gone remaster goes to PC. I think near the end of the month.
Yeah,
I think the Last of Us part. I think that's coming out this month. Yeah, it's that's tomorrow.
Yeah.
$50, by the way. That sounds like a cash grab for that game.
I don't know, man. That's half the. It's almost half the price of a Nintendo physical release. I hear.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, I don't know about you, Logic, but I'm always going to argue value for consumers. So.
Well, I also see on my timeline, someone can afford all the stuff, but they tend to think about others, the state of others, and feel bad for them because if you're not super rich, you can't afford a Switch 2. So that formulates their own opinion on the Switch 2.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I'm not really thinking of others when I'm buying stuff. I'm just not, I'm not really. I will say this though. I was in a truck forum and I was yelling and I posted something to the effect that I don't agree with Ford charging $90,000 for an F-350 Lariat truck. I think that's ridiculous. I'm always going to. I don't think truck ownership should be an elitist purchase or hobby. I'll always argue for truck consumers every time. So I just want to throw that out there. Anyhow, Logic, I was hoping you get a laugh out of that.
I did. I think I'm about trucked out though at this point.
I think Logic's tired of me talking about like truck tires and trucks. He's probably like, I don't care. Well, I mean, the only reason well, in part because I've gone down this rabbit hole. I don't know if I mentioned you, Kofi. I just bought a Chevy Silverado 2500.
Oh, used?
Yes. Yeah. BRAP doesn't buy new cars anymore. Like
I don't blame you.
Yeah. I look at like, there's like a 2-3 year window I look at,
Yeah.
especially what I found too in some vehicles, especially like if the generations or body types don't change for a while, they'll go through like generations, right? Like kind of like consoles. And so the body style that I have, it really hasn't changed. Although they're coming out with I believe a new Silverado 2500, probably 1500 too. I think just a new Silverado generation, I think next year. But mine doesn't look any different than what's come out this year.
Yeah.
The only thing's different is they added the bow tie to the front of the grill, where mine just says Chevrolet across and it's got a small bow tie. the Chevy bow tie, but I mean, it's the body style's the same. I mean, there's probably minor tweaks here and there, but you really can't tell the difference.
It might come to no surprise to you, but I'll say Chevy is one of the only American car brands that I can appreciate.
Oh, okay.
Shout out to you. I'm not the biggest American car fan, but
well,
you know,
I'll say this: Chevrolet Ford, they make the best vehicles they make are trucks.
Oh yeah, those things last.
SUVs,
I can't even hate on that.
Those things last. Yeah, those things. I mean, but yeah. So I bought that. I traded in the Denali and I got a 2500, and I've just gone down this rabbit hole because there's so much you can do aftermarket. And so I've been talking about some of this stuff with Logic, and I went through this thing where I was looking at tires, and I finally pulled the trigger on some tires. I got Nitto Ridge grapplers, but I was saying to Logic, like, even it's funny, a lot of the conversations we see in gaming about, oh, that's too expensive. Oh, why would you buy that when you can get, I went through that with tires, believe it or not. Like, people were like, why would you spend $2,000 on truck tires? I'm like, because I want to, because I like them.
Yeah, I get it.
Anyhow, I'm not gonna bore the listeners and Logic anymore with any more truck talk, but
so one correction I wanted to make: the Days Gone remaster that comes out near the end of the month that's actually a PlayStation 5 remaster, not PC.
Yeah, it is PlayStation 5. Yeah.
Oh, that's the Days Gone. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Days Gone was one of my favorite games on PS4. Actually, I didn't play it at launch, but I played it maybe a year after it came out, and I mean, it's not a perfect game. I think it's one of my criticisms of it's a little bit too. It's a little bit long. It goes on a little bit longer than it probably should. But yeah, I really liked it. I mean, it was. I mean, like the amount of zombies and stuff on screen and the story. It's got a pretty decent story. I thought it was a good game. I liked it. So, but I'm not going to go back and play the. I guess this is the remaster, right? The PS5 version is the remaster. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm not going to play it, but anyhow. All right, Logic. We were just talking about what games Kofi's playing right now. What about you? What are you currently indulging in?
The main thing I've been spending time in is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 on PC.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
I heard it was good.
It's a game of particular taste. Like I guess the reality is I'm a moody gamer, mood driven gamer. Like in stark contrast to like the way I listen to music. Like I hear a lot of people, they're like, oh, I feel this way, so I'm going to listen to this kind of music. Or I feel like I'm not like that. I just point whatever music player at the biggest collection that I have or whatever, and I just hit shuffle. But games, I definitely get into moods and states where like there's stuff that I want to play and stuff that I don't want to play. It's tough to stick with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 because it is such a heavyweight game. It very much skews in the direction of being an immersive sim. And it's described as an RPG or an action RPG in a lot of places. That's how it's tagged on Steam. That's how it's described on Wikipedia. I'm like, no, this game, it can be punishing by the way it does not have a save anywhere feature. It doesn't have a wide open save anywhere feature. You can effectively have a save anywhere feature by concocting a potion. And in this game, when you mix potions, you actually have to mix the potions. Like you have to learn the recipe, have the recipe recorded. You have to find an alchemy bench, and you actually have to then mix like the ingredients that you have grabbed. So, like as you go around the map, you have to constantly be harvesting, any herbs or anything that you come across because you never know when you're going to need them. So you actually have to go through that, and then you have to have this. It's the potion. It's called a schnapps. It's like a specific type of schnapps, and so you have to have it in your inventory in order to do a save anywhere. And it's a consumable. So once you use a dose of it, you no longer have that dose available. If you don't have that, then the way you have to save is you have to sleep, and you can't just sleep anywhere. So you can sleep anywhere, like as a game mechanic. You can find any bed and go to sleep. But the only way that you get a game save out of it is if you save your bed. if you sleep in your bed. My bed right now is completely on the opposite side of the map from where the current missions I'm running are. So if I go over to the other side of the map and I attempt a mission and I dork it up, I just lose all that progress if I actually get killed. So in that way, it's a little punishing, right? In terms of, or you can do a save and quit. Now, so you can affect basically a scum save if you save and quit and then restart the game. But when you restart and come back in, it overwrites that save. So if after you save and after you come back in, if you then get killed after that before getting, going somehow getting another save point, then like I don't know where I guess you go back to the last checkpoint. Again, effectively losing a bunch of progress. So in that way, it can be very, very time consuming. I often find, I complete a mission or I complete an increment of a mission and I have to go completely to the other side of the map. A couple of the adventures, like mini adventures that I've gone on have been like 30-minute like excursions, right? To do a thing.
So question.
Yeah.
If you quote unquote, as you said, screw it up, it doesn't just make the story like more interesting as it meanders in whatever chaotic direction, or because you made it sound like that's like like that's really bad.
Well, when I say screw it up, in that instance, I meant get killed, right?
Oh,
so like two major things that I've gone on. I've you wake up after getting captured at one point, and it's fairly early in the game, so it's part of the game setup. So it's not like Soldier of Fortune when you've completed like 70% of the game and they strip you of all belongings, all weapons, and then put you in a prison, and then you have to start all over again, right? It's not kind of a jerk thing like that. It's early in the game setup, and so you wind up in stocks right in the public square. You get out of that, but you've been stripped of everything. You have nothing but your underwear, and so this person comes along and gives you a bunch of like mini missions. You can go here to find a job and that person will pay you. You can go here to see if you can find clothes. You can go here to do blah, blah, blah. So I just struck off in the direction to go find a job. Again, I have no clothes on my back. I come across these bandits harassing this person in the woods. At that point, I do have a schnapps potion. So I take it. So I have a game save, right? At this point, also, the game has taught me nothing about like combat. It hasn't taught me how to sneak. It hasn't taught me how to get up behind somebody and knock them out. It hasn't taught me any of this stuff. So for whatever reason, I get it in my head that I'm convinced that I can sneak off into the woods, ambush these guys, sneak up behind them and knock one of them out and take their clothes and weapons. And then I'll have solved one of my big problems right in the beginning of the game. Needless to say, it was not that simple. There were a ton of game mechanics, like sneaking up behind somebody. The way you knock them out is you don't just like club them over the head. When you sneak up behind somebody, you have to do this you have to do like kind of like a Splinter Cell sneak. And if you remember OG Splinter Cell, there was like a 2 millimeter space, right, for you to pull off a sneak behind them thing, or else they would detect you. So you have that type of low tolerance, right, for getting in the zone. You have to grab them. That puts them in a chokehold. The chokehold becomes a mini game where like you've got them in the chokehold and you're waiting for this kind of QTE cross sword pip icon to come up, and you have to hit it at the right time. If you don't hit it at the right time, they try and do an escape maneuver by like, throwing their elbow back into your nose. You have an opportunity to pull off a perfect block, which is another kind of QTE kind of thing. If you miss that, then they pull out of the chokehold. If you hit it, then you immediately grab them again and immediately knock them out. But then once I have the person knocked out, then I have to, by that time, the second person that there was will always detect you. So then I have to evade that person, right, long enough to get back to the original Hood's body, do a double button move, because you have to hit A to bring up the loot UI and then press A hold to just loot everything. So I have to figure this thing out of putting them in chokehold and knocking them out. Then I have to figure out how to evade this person by like running into the woods and like keeping just ahead of them. They never lose track of you once they start chasing you. And then find enough time to get back to the body and do this loot all mechanic, get all the stuff on. So then I'm running away, right? Figuring, hey, if I can get just far enough away from this guy, I can throw all this stuff on and I can turn around and fight him. Well, I do that, but then that's when I find out that I can't save. So I'm like, okay, I just spent like an hour figuring all this stuff out. I am not about to turn around and fight this guy and wind up getting killed and have to do all that over again. So then, so then I take off. So that was like an hour of gameplay time. Now, admittedly, I could have just snuck by them and not been bothered with that whole thing. That was me getting obsessed. So part of that's on me. The other night, I went to go this mission that I had to go on. I had to find a prison, sneak into the prison, find this missing document, and pull up and get the document. So I went in during the day, and the one thing I really wish is I wish the map had a tighter zoom in level, because when you're in town, it's really difficult to differentiate, to tell where the icon is and specifically what building it's over. So I went into the wrong building. I wound up going into the stables. There's a guard sleeping upstairs. So I knock that guard out, loot that guard, find a chest upstairs. I thought that was the missing document. I just quickly loot it all. I'm coming out. As I'm coming out, I get spotted by another guard. I run back up into the loft of the barn. The guard's coming behind me, but there's a little window out there. So I lure him up to the barn, and then when he can't see me, I sneak out through the window. Then he comes back downstairs, sees me. So now I'm just running off, and I'm like getting out of his view. I find a little hut in an apple orchard, and I sleep there. But when I wake up, the game doesn't do a game save because that's not my bed. So that's one part where like I dorked the mission up, and in that case, Kofi, like that state of me screwing that mission up would have persisted. Like I would have gone back to the person who gave me that quest and not fulfilled it. So I wound up waking up after I did a save and exited. I came back in later that night, and I snuck back into the town. I had woken up too early, so it wasn't as dark as I thought it would be. So you can do this thing where I don't know what I want to call it. You can quick accelerate the clock and just bypass time. So I did that for like another 2 hours. Then it was dark enough.
Good.
So I snuck into the town. And by the way, since I kind of set off the alarm before, at this point now I'm in the town, and they're quicker and more likely to just arrest me on sight. So I just have to stay out of sight, right? So I'm sneaking around the town, finally find the prison, sneak down there, find this chest, steal the document. Now, the way I came in the prison, there's a guard back there now. So I can't come out, right? The only way out of this prison is I literally have to sneak out through the guardhouse, which is full of guards that are sleeping in it. So I'm finally able to sneak out of the guardhouse. I remembered where the stables were, so I snuck back to the stables, stole a horse, and then I rode out of town. So that whole description of like that hour, that's super immersive. Like I was living the game. Like I was having to think about where I was and the consequences of what I did and how I was going to fix something if I like screwed it up and blah blah blah. So in that way, it's super immersive. But that gameplay loop is just super heavy. It's not Avowed. It's not Assassin's Creed, right? Where you're kind of up on adrenaline, moving at 60 miles per hour, constantly engaged in combat, that kind of stuff. It's not that kind of game, at least not yet.
Interesting. Well, I love how you articulately just made your argument. That was pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's full of. The hook it has for me is I do love systems, right? I do love compartmentalized systems. I do love, you have to learn this, you have to learn that, you have to learn that. There are certain things that I can learn, but like in vehicle simulators, right? I learn all those systems very quickly. I learn those do loops. I'm not an expert at like living in a medieval world, right? With all the different systems they have implemented here. So I'm figuring all that out. But it is super immersive. It really makes you, for the time you're in the game, like you're in the game, right? You're really immersed in that world and thinking as if you're living there,
Amen.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like, so it's not like, would you say it's like, I guess you wouldn't compare it to something like, I think I heard you say Avowed, but what about like a Elder Scrolls game?
Maybe a little bit. Like, to me, it's a little more of like when I say immersive sim, to me, it's like a little bit more like a Dishonored.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it is like, I think the big thing is as you go throughout the campaign, you are going to take on different roles, right? Right now, like I said, I'm working for a person who owns and runs a mill, and it kind of starts off like with that type of stuff and those type of duties. And I won't spoil it, but then the story skews off in another direction, right? And I get like a new list of duties and a new set of things that I'm supposed to fulfill. And when I get done with this guy, I'm going to have to move on to another. I've moved on to another quest giver, which is kind of curvy. It's funny. It's funny you mentioned, well, does it that like just broken state persist? So in this third instance, where I am helping the gravedigger because the gravedigger knows where something is, and I'm supposed to go with him to go get it. And he's like, well, you need to help me collect bodies and stuff, and then I'll take you there. So I do that. I'm on his stagecoach. But when I come back from another little mini mission and then he's been waiting, he's being accosted by another 2 bandits, 3 bandits actually. So I do again. I sneak up behind one guy. I take him out. Then the other 2 guys realize I'm there. They start trying to take the gravedigger out. I kill one of them, but the third one is chasing the gravedigger down. The run mechanic of the game is literally such that I would never catch up to that because we're all running at the same speed. So, and then there's stamina, right? So periodically you have to take a break. So the gravedigger runs off. The bandit runs off behind him. At some point, I guess they split up. I circle back to the stagecoach. The gravedigger is nowhere to be found. Right, I'm relying on the gravedigger to come back to the stagecoach to drive me to where I need to go.
Oh my god!
He's at one point like there's like a little mission event trigger, and it says, "Hey, go meet him," and then he pops up with an icon on the map. But then when I head over there and about halfway over there, I check the map again, and the icon's not there. So now I'm like back at the stagecoach, and I'm like, I think this mission is just broken. He's never coming back. Well, what the hell am I supposed to do now? So I saved and quit at that point, but I'm like, this mission is scrubbed. Like I'm going to have to find out how to go get this saltpeter or whatever, some other way. So yeah, but to me, like I said, it skews in that direction of being an immersive sim because it's so heavyweight with like living in the world, right? And actually having to fulfill different obligations. And like I said, at one point you may be the apprentice of a blacksmith. At another point, you may be a thief. At another point, at some point, you just become like you get back to just being a straight up warrior, right? And it becomes a slightly different game. So it's almost like it's potentially 4 or 5 different games, right, in one, because you're playing different roles, throughout the campaign.
It sounds like an interesting game, Logic. Like it
is. I don't think it's a BRAP game. I'm just letting you know, because I think it's about it's supposed to be like about a 55-hour campaign. So I just don't know if it's something you would stick with, though. I don't know that I'm going to stick with it all the way through.
Wow.
You do know that I put in like 400 hours into Baldur's Gate 3.
Yes, but I think, but my impression is, but during that time you were always engaged in content that was in your wheelhouse. And I just don't know that this game has that kind of loop. This game, a lot of the loops, some of the loops are like just straight tedium. Like on 2 occasions, I've had jobs of like lifting, like carrying flour sack. For some reason, I guess flour sacks.
That's not gonna resonate with me.
Yeah. They're not deporting all their labor apparently in this world. They do want people to move flour sacks.
So you're saying? Oh, no, I'm not going to say that. Never mind. Oh man, yeah. BRAP doesn't. I don't like playing games that make me feel like I'm working, right? Because I work during the day and I have kids and I don't. Yeah. So maybe that. But is that? Do you find like there's this? Are they a lot of those types of missions where you're like doing that kind of work?
I've experienced
it's optional.
I've experienced twice, but it is optional because it's sort of kind of like it's optional because I went down certain paths that led me to like have to traverse that part. Like that was the way out of the thing. But I mean, but they've been deeply wound into the story, right? Like the first time I had to do it, that was a critical kind of breaking point with another one of the characters in the story. and then there was a follow-on event after that. And in the other one, that like there's actually a reveal that happens after you, like, as you move like the last like flour sack or whatever, that inflects the story and sends it off in a different direction. So it's all relevant, right? But there is, like, 5 minutes of time, right, that you're just walking back and forth like carrying sacks.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's not. I don't know. I think for me, it just would depend. Like if that was something that was if those types of jobs or whatever were a requirement to progress, or maybe just took away too much from like would break the experience for me too much. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, because sometimes like I feel like with games that like open world games or RPGs, if I'm playing something, I'm really into it, and then all of a sudden, like I'm like, wait a minute, do I have to do this? What? Like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to get back to doing this other thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think the reviews are pretty positive for this game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they were kind of high.
Yeah.
I mean, very high.
Yeah, it's in my opinion, like it's squatting kind of in that same place that what was the Dead game from, was it 2 years ago? It was another Saber Interactive game, I think. Was it Dead Island? Is that the franchise?
Yeah, they finally got that remake that was delayed for forever.
It wasn't the remake.
Or
This
sequel. I'm sorry.
Yes, this is the series where, I mean, I think it's called Dead. Yeah, I think it's Dead Island 2, but really it's Dead Island 3, because really the second game they just didn't call 2. But that was actually the sequel. So yeah, it was in development hell for a while. Yeah, it's squatting in that same place where it's a game that's punching above its belt, that you would probably think normally wouldn't be as well regarded, that I think is going to go on and continue throughout the year to be like, in the NPD list, for total games sold. So it's doing well. It's definitely hooking like a lot of people. I think a huge thing today is, and I don't think this needs to be every game, and I don't think it can be every game, but there are some games that are providing. There's a type of consumer on the market who is looking for the game that they can sink 100 hours to, right? That has a lot of replayability, that has a lot of, tons of side missions and busy work, and people will live in that world. I always talk about the buddy I had who, like, he and his crew literally only played like The Witcher 3 and occasional rounds of Battlefield, and then he would constantly say, "Yeah, I'm not buying anything until Cyberpunk comes out." And so for gamers like that, I think this game will stick with them because they can live in that world and they could just, do stuff, forever.
Yeah, or like a Baldur's Gate, right? Baldur's Gate, people just play that and then they play it again online. So I could see that.
I mean, Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, I went and played as different character classes.
I love Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, I think it's the best game I've played in the last decade. Yeah. I don't think I've spent. It's probably one of the games outside of a online multiplayer game, live service game. It's probably the most amount of time I think I've ever put into a game. And I played it on PC, and I started a playthrough on PS5, and it's just, I mean, just the character dialogue, the side missions, everything felt connected. It felt like it had purpose. Like when I'm talking about the side missions.
Yeah.
And I just, and there was things that I missed the first playthrough. I went back. I'm like, oh, I didn't know I could do this,
Yeah. You you find something new, right? A new space that you just never even thought was a space.
Yeah. Or because of the character class I selected, now I've unlocked a new dialogue tree, so it's, yeah, it was just such a geez, I may have to go back and finish it on PlayStation 5, but yeah, definitely one of my favorite games of the last decade.
Hey, and Kofi, we do have one request from the chat. If you are able to bump up your mic volume a little bit at all.
Yes.
All right, let's while Kofi's doing that, let's get into Nintendo here. Nintendo Switch.
Testing. That might be better.
Yeah, I think you. I mean, I think you sound. I thought you sounded okay before, but we'll see what the chat says.
Yeah, Chat, let me know.
Yeah, so I think it was Froggy who was saying maybe Kofi needs to be close to the mic, but Russell says it got to start giving plasma before those price increases. That's funny, but yeah, Nintendo Direct today. They revealed the Nintendo Switch 2. Finally got a look at it, and just gonna go over. Just gonna recap, kind of just a quick summary of the Nintendo Switch 2 features. Definitely an improvement, I think, from the first Nintendo Switch. It's good. This Nintendo Switch is going to come with a larger screen. It's a 7.9-inch screen with 1080p resolution, supporting HDR, VRR, and frame rates up to 120 FPS. The docking, though, allows gameplay in 4K resolution, which I think is awesome. The Joy-Con controllers, very, very almost identical, pretty much identical to the Joy-Con controllers on the Nintendo Switch. These Joy-Con 2 controllers do have magnetic connectors and mouse functionality for compatible games. They did ask one of the things I thought was really interesting or cool. Nintendo seems to come a bit more, I don't know, up to speed with just the social aspect of gaming. They introduced the C button on the right Joy-Con that enables game chat. And they showed off a demonstration of game chat. You can also share your screens. You can use and I thought I was totally shocked by this. There's a USB-C camera for video chat. So Nintendo is going to be selling a camera, which I was like, okay, that's definitely a change of pace for Nintendo, considering I think how archaic their social features were on the Nintendo Switch. There's also game share. You can share games locally or online with friends, even if they don't own the game. The storage, they actually increased storage 8 times compared to the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch 2 is going to come with 256 gigabytes of internal storage, and it allows the option to expand that with micro SD express cards. There's also backwards compatibility, supports physical and digital games from the original Nintendo Switch, and enhanced editions for some titles. I think, did we talk about that, Logic, whether or not they were going to do backwards compatibility? I think we maybe talked about it a bit, maybe speculated that hopefully they would include some kind of include backwards compatibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got kind of 2 waves of indications that I took the continuation of the Nintendo Switch Online strategy as indicative that they were going to do backwards compatibility because they were carrying through your access to the online games, and I was like, well, I don't think they'll carry through access to the online games, but not like the physical games that you have. And then I think we got another indicator with the early Switch 2 reveal, where they did say that Switch games were going to be playable on Switch 2, but just not all.
Yep. And then the console sets release on June 5th of this year. The price tag of $450 here in the US.
If I didn't miss it, also, it looks like it has support up to 120 FPS for some games. Is it the backwards compatible games?
I don't know. It's a great question. Logic, do you hear anything in regards to 120 backwards compatibility? I know there might be actually, I think with Nintendo, I think with Breath of the Wild, I think that actually supports 120, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so there are Nintendo. I mean, this, in my mind, it is very much like it's gonna be done the same way that the Xbox One Scorpio rollout was done, where there will be periodically, bundles of Switch games that you're told are ready, and have the Switch 2 enhancements basically implemented. Both Breath of the Wild and I always want to say Taken King, and Tears of the Kingdom are 2 of the games that will have that implemented at launch. And so my understanding is if you are a Nintendo Switch Online subscriber, you can pull down those upgrades, I won't say free of charge, but it's an entitlement that you get via your subscription. And then if you aren't subscribed, you'll be able to go to the store and order, and pay for the upgrade pack, which I've seen a lot of people speculating that that's $20. I think that would seem weird to me. I'm pretty sure it should be like a $10 upgrade, I would hope and think.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You said $20?
That's what I've seen some people think. I think there's just a lot of, yes, look, I get it. Like this pricing structure and some of the things, certainly don't seem appealing and certainly don't track along with the things that I said last week on DPS and things I've said on E2KG, where I felt like, look, Nintendo more than the other two console vendors is really in this pinch where they really need to get people moved over as quickly as possible from Switch to Switch 2. I felt that meant that they were going to give people like lots of reasons to do that conversion. That is not the case. And so because of that, like I think there's just racing off to hyperbole that, everything that is still unanswered is going to be, 15 times as egregious as, you might naturally think it was. I don't think that. To a $20 upgrade pack doesn't make sense to me. So I'm gonna believe that it's 10 until proven otherwise.
I mean, 20. I mean, but if they did do $20, I don't think I'd be surprised because it's Nintendo. But I think in comparison to the PlayStation, where PlayStation offered that $10 upgrade pack, I would imagine they would probably go the same route.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
but I'm also of the mindset it's Nintendo.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, but it's a price. Theoretically, it's a price you're charging to the people who have just rewarded you by buying your new console, right?
Mhm.
So,
yeah. Kobe, what do you think about this upgrade path?
This is going to branch, so I'm going to sound a little repetitive from before, but I would be concerned. The number one reason, I don't know if I'm going to name two reasons. The first is, yes, we've seen this trend through PlayStation, and an upgrade path sounds okay when the base price is reasonable on its own. Now that we're talking about these new prices being so high and potentially paying $10 to $20 to upgrade the old price, I think my greatest concern is Nintendo rarely discounts these processes, whether it be a physical game or a game from their e-purchase store. It doesn't sit right with me because of the general trend of where their software pricing is going. Had it been something a little more reasonable, I think $10 is not a problem. I think especially if we were talking about over the lifespan of Switch 2, really seeing some graphical improvements, right? Some of the things that we saw right now was, frame rates, resolution, but I would like to see something like Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition, really get a really good update, because that game's resolution on the base Switch portable was kind of poor for paying full price. So I think they have an opportunity to make this feel valuable. Right now, with how prices are looking, it's not encouraging. It's not an encouraging purchase. It's not making me excited to jump deeper into Nintendo's ecosystem. Because I do pay for the Switch Online. That's because I got young family members who I want to introduce to games that I knew. I don't want just Fortnite.
So wait, so if your children are playing Nintendo Switch, I just want to make sure I got this correct.
Yeah.
That means that the Nintendo Switch is the future of gaming. Do I understand that correctly? Like future gaming predicated on what the kids are playing? Is that to make sure I got that right?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I will say that I'm very into diversifying my kids' tastes in games. So, other than an Xbox, they do play a variety of pieces of hardware, and a variety of games exclusives. Yeah. Right. But yeah, overall, yeah, not feeling so good. Not feeling so good about
Yeah.
the prices. I think I would be fine with it, right? For example, we were just talking about Days Gone, right? $10 upgrade at least for me because I do happen to own Days Gone digitally. So I can't turn around and be a hypocrite and say, "Oh, well, now Nintendo's doing it." I don't like it. I think what sits unwell with me is um, the rest of these titles seemingly being so expensive, and yeah, I'll touch on other point later, but I'm just uncomfortable with the way things are looking.
Yeah. I just pulled up through the Nintendo website here. These are some of the games that are switched to have switched to upgrades. Look, I'm not surprised, shocked that we see Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, or Tears of the Kingdom here. I think to me those were gimmies. Like I'm like those two games are definitely going to be there. And and you know it's. I mean, I thought those games running on the Nintendo Switch, I thought that was like Nintendo wizardry that they got those games running pretty good on the Nintendo Switch. I can only imagine how they're gonna run and look on the Switch too. But here are some of the upgrade details for Breath of the Wild. Um, Improved frame rates and resolution, faster load times, HDR support. Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, the Switch 2 edition also is going to support improved frame rates, resolution, faster load times, and HD support. So again, not totally surprised by this. Super Mario Party Jamboree that comes out July 24th. New way to play exclusive to Nintendo Switch 2, Jamboree TV, new modes that use mouse controls, microphone, and compatible USB-C camera. That's sold separately. Players appear within the game via camera play using a compatible USB-C camera sold separately. I think that was was that the game they were. I think that was the game that they were playing when they were showing the social aspects of the Nintendo Switch 2. Game share compatibility for local multiplayer, 1440p resolution in TV mode, full HD 1080p in tabletop mode, and handheld mode. They got some other game. Kirby is also getting some. Some of these games are also getting new content. It's a new story for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Starcross World, visually enhanced, improved frame rates. Pokemon Legends, improved performance with higher frame rate and resolution. Metroid Prime Beyond, that is going to get an up. What's that?
That's a big one. Just to see that title on there, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's gonna be big. Yeah. But Metroid Prime Beyond support for mouse controls for Joy-Con 2 controllers, enhanced resolution, texture load times. And then quality mode runs at 60 FPS per second in 4K resolution. TV mode, 1080p while in handheld mode. Performance mode runs 120 frames per second in 1080p resolution, TV mode, 720p in handheld mode. Both display modes feature HDR support. So those are some of the upgrades. Frames are capped at 60 FPS in 4K resolution mode. Oh, actually, let me read this here. Nintendo account, persistent internet compatible smart device required. HDR compatible display required. We don't know that. Requires TV supports local specified resolution. This is a display compatible. Yeah, that's a given. Here we go. 120 FPS only available at 1080p resolution. Frame rates are capped at 60 FPS in 4K. So there we go. All right, let's see here. I think there was some other. Back to Nintendo's website here. By the way, Best Buy is having a their pre-orders start at midnight, April 9th. Hold on, did I read that correctly? Yes, Best Buy to open stores at midnight for Nintendo Switch 2 launch. Pre-orders available April 9th. Sorry, I read that backwards. So April 9th, the pre-orders go live, and then they're doing a midnight launch release on June 5th for the Switch 2. Look, I was at Games. Oh, let me get Nib in here. I want to welcome Nib to the show. Nib, should I say good morning? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, it's really early. I don't know. My Bluetooth headset isn't working right now. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear, Deb.
Are you sure? All right, let me just
Yeah,
throw
yeah,
away
we can
this,
hear you.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, sorry,
So,
I'm a
so
bit
Deb,
late.
I got to ask you, Deb, how are the markets reacting right now? I know we talked about that a little bit in
So
DM.
they
Yeah.
were dumping hard, and that's why I wasn't here. I was in the middle of some shorts, but then it kind of started reversing a little while ago. And Shanghai opened, Shanghai markets opened, I don't know, probably 15 minutes ago or something. They haven't really reacted negatively, so there's a bit of a reversal. We'll see how things go. But overall, it was very negative, very bearish.
Yeah, I haven't been keeping up with the market here in the U.S., but it's gonna be interesting to see how it opens tomorrow morning. I know futures were down 2% here, so we'll see.
Yeah. And when we're talking with the market cap, we're talking 2% is a lot, like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's a massive amount. But yeah, so I'm just keeping an eye on it at the same time, because I'm going to sound so horrible coming on here and the first thing I say, but sometimes like volatility in markets is good for making money.
Well, I mean,
but yeah, it is what it is. Anyway,
there's
so
something to be said for that. That's why I said to you, now's the time to buy.
yeah, or to short. Like if you
or
think the
short,
market is dumping, put in a short, and the lower it goes, the more money you make, which is horrible when you think about it. But like, the fact that we have a system that allows you to profit off the misery of the market,
Oh my
it's just
goodness.
crazy.
Well, yeah, and not to get off topic here, but I will say this: I know during the housing crisis here in 2008 in the U.S., I know people that made significant amounts of money by buying property at the cheap and then flipping it. But anyhow,
Yeah.
But no, Dib, glad you could join us. I know it's late there, so I really appreciate the time. I was hoping to get you. I know last week I was trying to get you on, and I know you couldn't because you were going to be on Crossfire on Thursday. So I don't
Correct.
know if
Yeah, correct.
yeah. So are you on Crossfire this week or no?
No, I'm not. No, at least I don't think I am. No.
Okay.
But there's been a lot of news.
Yeah, yeah. Big news, huh?
I mean, I've come obviously late. I didn't hear your discussion before, but the panel here, like, what's the energy, what's the vibe as to the Nintendo announcements and stuff? Because as far as I can tell, the response on social media has actually been quite negative. Because the pricing and like it's crazy.
Yeah, no, we've just so far we've only discussed just some of the Switch 2 features that Nintendo announced. I mean, obviously this is an upgrade, right, from the Nintendo Switch, which I think is great, by the way. They didn't put out like a clone and charge more money for something that doesn't have any new feature sets, right? There's there's a larger 7.9-inch screen, does 1080p resolution, supporting HDR, VR, frame rates up to 120 frames per second, 4K resolution and docking. So there's all these different things. What I was surprised by, Nib, and I mentioned this to the panel, was just their how they've incorporated things like game chat and now provide a camera for video chat.
Yeah.
One thing I also really like, and I use all the time on PlayStation, is apparently screenshots you take in game will now link to their Nintendo app instantly. I can't tell you how many times I'll share through my phone, screenshots or video recordings I have on my PlayStation. I love that feature.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
To see that screenshot and instantly go to my phone. Oh, I'm here for that. That's great.
But the voice chat, as far as I understand, it's locked behind a paywall. Is that right?
It is. Yeah, it's paywalled. Yeah. People are upset about that.
Well, what do we mean? What do we mean when we say it's paywalled?
Like the online
you have to subscribe.
Subscription. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you have to be subscribed on other platforms to use their online features.
Yeah, but not
True.
to chat, just to play online games. Yeah, but you can, as far as I understand, anyway, on Xbox.
But I mean, to play online games in the first place, you have to be subscribed.
Yeah,
and so it would be irrelevant if you were that just seems like such a Scooby-Doo scrap of crap to be upset about.
The bulk of the most popular online games on PlayStation and Xbox are free to play. So you actually don't need a subscription to chat or play Fortnite or Warzone.
Yeah, but I'm not worried about people who are involved in black hole games, right? Those people can continue playing black hole games on any piece of hardware. The people who are actually interested in the Nintendo Switch 2, right, are not people on black hole games. It is the people in that 4 to 16% that Matt Piscatella talked about, right? That are interested in procuring games for which there is actually a valid need, right, to conduct any type of upgrade because those games play better there. So those types of people, like, again, I would contend the camera doesn't do you any good unless you're playing online multiplayer anyway. And to play online multiplayer, you have to be subscribed. So I don't know what anybody's upset about.
Yeah, I do think though that there is a chance that we might see more like high performance games and stuff be ported or have more, let's just say, viability on Switch 2 because of the upgraded hardware and the upscaling technology and stuff. So I don't know. I'm really curious to see, because I feel like now if we're getting to an image quality and graphics stage where it doesn't look complete, like a complete blurry mess, then maybe it could actually be fairly useful for on the play, FTP gaming or whatever, for those types of games, because they're not like it'd be interesting to see.
And then in that case, I just feel like that wedge of people isn't bothered by paying, right? That's a person who's, say, playing Fortnite and is competitive, right, or cares about how well they do, and says, hey, if I can play Fortnite on Nintendo Switch at 120 frames per second, right, or even 60 frames, or any type of bump from the baseline Nintendo Switch that actually makes a difference in my gameplay, then I'm willing to pay for that. And if they're going to use the camera and voice chat, which again I don't know that they will, because I don't know that would
voice chat certainly.
Yeah. Well, if you're using in-game chat to communicate, right? But you're probably playing crossplay, and so that maybe that's not your communications route.
I better stop playing these Nintendo videos in the background before they demonetize me.
Yeah, true.
No, they will. I'm serious. Nintendo will freaking demonetize me.
Yeah, they're like that, man.
They'll put a copyright strike. Maybe I should. I'm going to take the page down here.
What is the monthly cost for the Nintendo subscription at the moment?
It is the cheapest in the industry.
It's $20 a year right now.
$20 a year.
Yes.
Okay,
it is literally pennies per month.
Right? Yeah.
That's not even. Yeah, come on.
And so that's why I say, like, the people who say, they put chat behind a paywall. I'm like, okay, that's a little Sturm and Drang, right? A little, wailing and gnashing of teeth and making an issue out of a thing that isn't as big as an issue as you think it is for the bulk of the majority of the market.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, $20 a year is I'm not to downplay it, but this is an expensive hobby anyway, so $20 is literally.
Oh well, you can't say that, Nib.
Yeah,
it's an expensive hobby. Don't say that. I mean, you have to be advocate for
yeah. The thing is, like, I'm always in this like weird middle ground, because some people, like, I've been called a corporate bootlicker, and I've been called the opposite, and it's like sometimes you just have to be realistic with the market, right? Like, it's not that I'm saying like, oh well, yes, take my money, like, throw my money at the screen, take everything. It's not that, but it's like you need to know the realistic situation with hardware, with manufacturing costs, with die sizes not shrinking in the same way, and all these other things. And sometimes I think people just really aren't aware of any of that, and it's just like, no, I want my historical prices and I want them now. But it's like the market isn't the same. Like, you literally can't do that. Like me, as like my own business, like I can't physically do that. Otherwise I would be out of business next week, like things have really changed. And everyone feels it to a degree. Like when you buy your grocery shopping every week, I'm sure how much things have gone up. Well, to a macro level that exists in gaming and production and manufacturing and everything as well. But yeah, it's
it's interesting. To your point, Logic, about the the voice chat. I mean, in some ways I kind of understand the knee jerk reaction, because there it's just you don't have to pay for online chat, but I think to your point, shit, now I forgot what you said. I think what you said is like if people are playing, I think what you're trying, correct me if I'm wrong here, like I think your point is if people are paying for online anyway, and that's included in that, then it's kind of a wash. Is that?
I mean, and then my other generic feel is like, if you're somebody who has so many friends that are playing on Nintendo Switch that it's of value to take advantage of those social features, and you're literally doing the things that they showed in the commercial, in the direct, right? And you're coming home and you're online and you're talking to friends, right? And you're playing these games on a platform that has, in my mind, had a lot of feature implementation friction that has really prevented you from doing that. Then I don't think, right? Then that what that tells me is you're probably the type of consumer who is subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online, and you're playing right through those legacy game packs or whatever that are available on the service. And I think it's just going to be there for you to use it. If you're the type of consumer that has such an umbrage about paying for online access and throws around terms like putting it behind a paywall, which I personally feel is a silly term that's just come into being in the last 10 years or so. We used to just call that paying for stuff. And if you're so bothered by that, then you're not going to pay it, which means that social feature isn't important to you, and you're going to be an adult and make a decision and choose to pay for the things that you want and not pay for the things that you want. You're not entitled to it. They don't have to give it to you, right? And if you don't want to pay for it, then that means it probably doesn't matter that much to you. If you're taking a moral stand on that issue, then stick to your guns and stick on your religious square, right? And do that. But again, the whole thing of it's a paywall and it's just I'm like, no, it's just people ask you to pay for stuff, you pay for it if you want it, you don't pay for it if you don't.
Well, I think that's the point. Like it's that simple. You either say no or you say yes. Like I feel like we have this conversation every week. Like I don't think we have these conversations with other consumer products the way we do with gaming. I don't hear Nib yelling at Mercedes for not included Louis Vuitton leather stitching.
They make you pay for every shit, man. All these special features in your sat nav and your entertainment, SIM card and this and that, so you can use the traffic awareness, which is free on Google. Waze and all of that. They charge you for all of that stuff these days.
Yeah, like I'm not yelling, Nib. I think you saw the truck I saw you liked it, but I'm not yelling at Chevrolet for quote unquote paywalling the full complete towing feature that my truck doesn't have, where I can see like a satellite view of my truck hitching up to my truck. Like I'm not yelling at Chevrolet. I consciously made the as a consumer that, hey, you know what, why I like that, I don't value it enough to pay the extra $1,000 or whatever it is dollars, and I think to your point, Logic, I don't disagree. Like I don't, like, you either buy it or you don't buy it, and if it's not for you, it's just not for you. And you just move on about your life as you do when you make other purchasing decisions as a consumer. I don't understand the hyper focus as it relates to games. I feel like we had this conversation last week, Nib, on Crossfire.
Look, man, you're being asked to pay $1.67 per month, right?
I didn't know it was that low. I really thought it was, because I only play single player games on my Switch anyway, so I've never felt the need to get the subscription. But yeah, I mean, if it's that low, come on.
I mean, to get access to all of the online features as well as the voice chat. Now, look, I'm not going to say this is a good example, and I'm probably outing myself, right? But if I make a morning run to Starbucks, right, depending on how much coffee and how many extra shots of espresso I want in my coffee, that might be a $20 run, right? That is the price of Nintendo Switch Online for an entire year. So, like I said, I don't get it. There are things to be upset about, certainly. Being upset over the $1.67 to get access to all of the other stuff, of which the voice chat is like pennies on the dollar, I don't think is that big a deal. The other thing,
I agree with you. I would say, to play devil's advocate, it's just like, I agree. I spend more than that on my lunch sometimes, but obviously, like, some people financially, like, these things are, maybe they're in the wrong hobby if like this cost does hurt them, I would say, because like like I said before, this is not an inexpensive hobby. So if $20 is hurting you, then maybe you need to reconsider the hobby. But yeah, I mean, I get it. For some people, even $20 is a lot. And I think from what I've read, it's more like, how come other people are offering it free and they're not? But for Nintendo, it probably was more of a development process and more of a cost, because they're historically not great at these kind of online integration things. So maybe, you know, for them it was more of a consideration and effort. So I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, like I had no idea it was that low. Like $20. Like, come on. Yeah.
Well, that's what I think. And you bring up some good points, right? It's like, I think this is one of my big tirades today, right? People are like, well, you know, you talk about all these costs, and so you're justifying it and defending it. I'm like, no. What I'm telling you is that there's causality behind these costs, and I'm also telling you that because I think you need to understand, unlike some other large influencers in the way that they peddle outrage, is I'm not sitting here telling you a false narrative that you being outraged about this on social media is going to make this change overnight, and suddenly Nintendo is going to be incentivized to change all these prices. They're not. If you think that there's going to be some harmonization and unification of some proletariat uprising, and people who are below the threshold, who are offended by all these prices, are going to clasp hands around the world and force Nintendo to lower prices, that is not going to happen. The more prudent use of your time is, like you said, Nib, start figuring out how you're going to approach this hobby differently or get out of this hobby. Because you're not gonna rage against the machine and get these things to change. The practical reality of part of what's going on, right, to go back to what you said, Nib, is let's remember that Nintendo is not a cloud service provider. So when Xbox provides this stuff at you know, in your mind, for free, there's a reason for that. They're the number 2 cloud service provider in the world, right? Doing anything in the cloud from a service perspective, right, costs Xbox literally nothing. And in fact, for years has literally cost them nothing. That's what was in that thing that was called the accountability margin that came out during the hearings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They were not carrying cloud service costs, cloud spend, anything that they leaned on Azure for, right? They were not carrying that within their P&L cost center. So it didn't cost them anything. PlayStation, more at scale. They have more games, more services that are dependent on cloud than Nintendo has historically had. So it's not as much of a charge to them. They're probably able to buy more cloud credits at bulk, right, and get a cost savings for that. So right now, and like the other thing that we get in revisionist history is we also forget, and we go back in time, how lots of these services weren't there at the outset of the PlayStation Network or for Xbox Live. Those things came gradually over time. So it's not like all these things were available at jump. These things also evolved over time, right? And this is Nintendo finally getting into that seat, right? When historically, you know, they haven't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to go back to,
you know, I don't know if you guys have discussed this, and I have no idea, because I know last time Trump was in office, he also introduced tariffs. I don't know how that affected pricing or if it did, but as far as I have read, the tariffs to China will be 54%. This is a 34% reciprocal tariff based on the amount they get. The US goods get tariffed over there, and then there's 20% that was already agreed. So I think one of the White House correspondents did acknowledge that yes, the total tariff amount to China would be 54%. So 54% to me is like a massive amount. How does that play into pricing of goods made in China? Like, are we going to see an exponential increase in prices from goods from China, or how does it work? Like, I'll be honest, I don't really know the ins and outs.
So I think the way this works is, and there's a bunch of stuff to unpack. I think one of the misunderstandings going around is the thought that Nintendo has the tariff price embedded in the 450 price.
No way, I don't think so.
They don't, right?
No.
Nintendo's covering down on their manufacturing costs and whatever margin, right? They need, like, the tariff doesn't exist until that pallet of Nintendo Switches comes off the dock, right? And it's picked up by the retailer. So Best Buy, GameStop will pay Nintendo whatever the deal under the table is at volume pricing, right, for the pallet of Nintendo Switches. Nintendo sends them over here. when Best Buy and GameStop go to pick up their pallet of Nintendo Switches from the dock, they pay the tariff, right? So if the tariff is whatever it is, an extra $130, $245, whatever, that is now a cost that is initially borne by Best Buy and GameStop. What Best Buy and GameStop probably have some automated system already set up so that somebody in accounts payable or accounts receivable, whichever, pushes a button, right, and initiates an exchange that sends that money off to the Treasury Department or wherever it's supposed to go. What Best Buy and GameStop will then decide to do is, do we eat the cost on the tariff, right, and still sell these things on the retail shelf at $450, or do we mark them up and recover some of that, or do we entirely pass that cost on to the customer? They may also play games with each other, right? Like, let's say Best Buy decides that they're going to pass $50 of that onto the customer and take the rest out of their margin. Maybe GameStop decides, hey, Best Buy's charging an extra $50, we're going to charge an extra $40, and therefore, like gas station wars, we're going to look like we're $10 cheaper. I think what is going on with pricing, maybe, is that in some countries, what will happen is the nation will subsidize its manufacturers so that those manufacturers can sell those goods to American retailers cheaper. And so the country will take on the burden of the costs so that their manufacturers remain competitive. What may be happening, and where there may be some fudging right in the price that Nintendo has set, is Nintendo may have set a high bar at $450 so that when tariffs kicked in and they see a negative bump in demand because the price is being set so highly in America, they can choose to reduce their price to American retailers, right? Because American retailers may say, hey, normally we would have ordered 1 million Switches per shipment, but now we're going to crunch that down to 800K because we don't know that we're going to see the demand. And so what Nintendo might say is, okay, how about we lower the price to you down the American retailers aren't paying $450. Maybe they're paying, let's call it $375. So maybe Nintendo says, hey, how about we bump the price down to $350 and you still order your 1 million. And that's how there's compensating cushion and float for the tariff, possibly, on the Nintendo side.
Yeah, I agree with you that I don't think the tariffs were included or involved in the pricing. One, because they hadn't been, fully finalized, but two, also because if you look at the price increases across the entire world, they're kind of in line with the price of the US price. So, like the UK is not adding tariffs to China. So, like if a US was uniquely positioned because of the tariffs, I assume the price would have been reflected in that, as opposed to basically matching the entire world's pricing system. So yeah, but that's interesting. I didn't know that it was on the retailer side. So yeah, I guess it's down to the retailers then to see if they can if they put it onto the consumer or they add it onto the product. But as someone who used to work in like a game store and was in charge of buying and selling products and games and stuff on the wholesale level, like I know the margins aren't huge, so a 54% tariff sounds crazy to me. So they surely have to put a good chunk of that onto the consumer just to retain profitability.
Yeah, I think the one other thing that I want to detangle is I've also heard a lot of discussion today where I think it's like some people out in the gaming community are also getting tariffs confused with foreign exchange rates and ascribing that to that, like that's why the Switch, that's why the Switch in Japan is cheaper. Again, there may be some padding that Nintendo is putting on there, right, so that they can come down on price to wholesale retailer costs in order to compensate for tariffs, maybe. But at face value, right, that price is cheaper in Japan because of foreign exchange rates, and because like the logistics of getting it in Japan are obviously not like way less than they are getting it over here to the U.S.
And you're talking about the version in Japan that plays all languages, right? Not the Japan exclusive one.
I haven't followed it that closely to know what those two different SKUs are.
So I think it's a difference of $100 and something, right? $140.
It is correct, but I think you're talking about the actual international version of the Switch 2 that sells in Japan for less yen compared to the dollar, as opposed to the language exclusive one.
Yeah,
because that has a whole different thing going on.
Yeah, I want to go back to something Nib said about because this is something I've seen on social media about the hobby, right? The hobby being expensive. And I give me a second here. I want to pull something up. This is this idea that this shouldn't be an elitist hobby. I mean, it's an expensive hobby. It always has been. But at the same time, though, um, I feel like when people say that they aren't, maybe they're purposely excluding this point, that gaming, I think, is more accessible than it has been, at least in my lifetime, from what I can recall. You
I
have
agree.
subscription services, you have free to play games, you have different. I mean, you have access to games on your phone, devices you already own, to streaming services you already subscribe to, Netflix, Amazon. And I don't know. And look, I think that as consumers, and again, this goes back to what I always say on the show, that I think we tend to have really interesting conversations as it relates to gaming, and we don't apply the same. I don't think we apply the same consumer behavior or thoughts that we have when we're interacting with other consumer goods with gaming. I don't think anyone on the panel does this, but I think other people do. Where if something's too expensive, if it's too expensive for you, you either wait for it to go on sale, or you just go elsewhere.
Yeah, so that is the funny thing. I mean, you bring up a good point, because like, in a way, we do have quite a lot of flexibility, at least on the console side, because you still have buying, selling, trading, game sharing, multiple accounts. Now Nintendo even is introducing this like digital game sharing thing as well, where you can, up to, I think it's 12 members of your family like group or whatever, and you can game share with them one at a time, and for 2 weeks at a time they can play your digital game as well. And then, like you said, you have subscription services, you have game rental services. So there's a lot of flexibility, like, because when I was like in uni and stuff, I used to actually take advantage of those trade-in things, and people think I'm making it up, but really, trust me, like, we're quite privileged in the UK, because we get there's this website called hotukdeals.com, and they basically constantly people post like really good deals and discounts, and we're actually able to get most retail pre-ordered games for extremely cheap, sometimes 20% off, sometimes 30% off, sometimes 15% off, but usually pretty good margin. And the trade-in stores, there's one called Computer Exchange. You can basically, when a game just launches, you can book in a trade-in. You can lock in the price for a whole week with free postage to the store. You just print off the label from their website and you just stick it in a post box. And I used to do that quite a lot. And because within the first week to 3 to 4, the game was still new and they just wanted as much stock as possible, because they don't buy stock themselves, they only sell what people trade in. They used to offer like a really high value for new games. And sometimes I would even get more after beating a game after a few weeks from Computer Exchange in cash than I would than I paid for the game, so I would actually profit. Now, I'm not saying that exists in the United States, but I understand you have GameFly and other options. So yeah, like, if maybe you have to sacrifice convenience, and you will not be able to be as lazy, but like, if you want to save money in this hobby, buy physical, trade in, or wait for sales, or stick to a subscription, or whatever else. Like you said, there are means, and you don't even have to do a whole annual subscription. If you want to play Assassin's Creed Shadows, for example, get Ubisoft Plus for a month. It's like, what, like $14 or something? Like, just do it for a month, and you just have to be a bit more savvy, or just put a bit more
Yeah.
effort. And yeah, this can be an expensive hobby, but if you put in the effort and you're frugal about it, you can also save a lot of money, or
I have a question for you, for your location regarding Switch physical game prices.
Mhm.
Did you notice since 2017 that physical games for Switch had a reasonable price drop over the years, or you felt like they had a floor that was, still kind of like $40, $50 equivalent?
Yeah, no. So basically, what I find, like, because games, so at launch or near launch, games always tend to be a bit more expensive. And then what I find is over the course of a generation, retailers begin to start discounting games again, or they come in cheaper or whatever. I don't know, what their like sort of arrangement is. But Switch games these days, like, you can get them for that sort of like 40-45 pounds range, even though I believe they're supposed to retail for like 55 or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, this jump with the Switch 2 is actually quite substantial. I believe they're going up to 75 pounds. So the reason I think it's probably going to hit people a little bit is because even though realistically it should be a jump from like 55 or 60 to 75, most consumers are going to feel more like 45 to 75 because this is a new product or whatever. But that's kind of always the case with the new generation. When the PS5 and the Series X came out, those early like physical titles were pretty much always close to the top of their RRP, whereas nowadays you can get them much cheaper. Like, I think I paid
Right. So
Yeah.
this kind of touches on a issue I personally have with Nintendo, where at least compared to PlayStation, or maybe you can make an equivalent for Steam, but Steam doesn't
Oh,
have
don't go on
physical.
sale as much. Yeah.
Yeah, and the sale percentage seems to be
Much less.
50%. Yeah, like a Nintendo game will go to 50% off, and that's great. But when it's really old, like a title that came out within a year of the Switch's launch, they'll still be like $45, $50. And I think that if we're looking at games potentially, as high as $90 physical,
Mhm.
I want that price to have a greater range of discounts 5 years from now. I want that game to be $30.
But that
I don't want it
does
to be
have a
50.
benefit as well if you buy physical, because a lot of times, like, Xenoblade and Tears of the Kingdom or whatever, I have bought those games, completed and beat them without rushing, and then sold them on eBay or Gumtree or whatever, and basically got my money back. So because they don't go on sale
Or like
again,
got a good percentage back.
it got a
I
good
do
percentage. Yeah. No, because I
I
always
do
buy
agree
my
with that.
games like discounted with a voucher or something anyway. So I never, I can't remember the last time I actually paid the MSRP on any game.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, so there are, in a way it's a negative because you can't buy brand new on a heavy discount, but the positive is you could, if you don't mind, you don't need to keep it long term, or you don't mind buying it later, you
Yeah.
can just sell it on.
I agree that holding their value is valuable. I'm just so for example, I'm concerned, and maybe this is me being ridiculous, that Mario Kart World, we know it's going to be $80 at least in America, MSRP. We also know that this is probably a game that's going to be supported for a long time. My hope, which I will probably be wrong, is that the $80 will include any support for the next 4 or whatever years afterwards, right? Like Gran Turismo 7, right? Gran
If,
Turismo 7, I paid
if
$70. I've gotten so many cars and new tracks and options for liveries, and they've got the championship stuff. They had the Olympics going. It was great. And I'm still enjoying GT7 when I can. But my fear is the greediness Nintendo has to say, yeah, we charged you $80, but guess what? Now we got this additional DLC we're still going to charge you for, even though we hit you with that 80 up front.
Yeah, you'll get it if you're subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online.
Now,
that's who got all the
so
Mario
you
Kart
believe
support
that,
last time.
but it was additional cost.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think that paradigm or model is going to change.
Interesting.
I mean, this
that's
is
disappointing for me.
Yeah, and I mean, and I don't want to belie anybody's interpretation of how they're impacted. But I do want to kind of point to some things that are causality, right? I think one of the things that now I've lost a tweet that I had earlier today. I think one of the things we have to acknowledge is that the people there's so many people who aren't impacted by this, right? And I know when I say that, there's going to be tons of outrage, not from you guys, but like from the chat and people who hear it. But I want to go back to the stats that Matt Piscatella gave us earlier this year, right? 4% of the market are people who buy more than 12 games a year, right? So 4% of the market buys a game every month, and then picks some number of months, maybe less than 12, to buy an additional game, right? So they buy somewhere between 12.1 and 24 games a year, right? The next 12% only buy one game a month, right? So now you're at 16, but 18% will buy one game every 6 months or 2 games a year. 30% of gamers will not buy a game this year at all. So 48% of your market, almost 50% of your market, either buy no games or only buy 2 games a year. So the vast bulk of the market, their perspective is, I used to pay, if I played on Nintendo, I used to pay $120 a year for 2 games. Now I have to pay $160. And those are acute opportunity costs that pinch you peanut buttered out over the 12 months. So I just don't know that those people's perspective is going to be such that, right, there's like a major cataclysm going on here. The other thing is, from Nintendo's perspective, why did we make this choice, right? In addition to what I said, maybe putting buffers and some pad in there to potentially contend with tariffs coming down the pike. But Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold 67.35 million copies. That is more than 50% of their install base. Animal Crossing New Horizons, 47.44 million. Super Smash Brothers, 35.9 million. Breath of the Wild, 32.7 million, 0.6 million. Super Mario Odyssey, 29 million. When Nintendo sells a big first-party game, they can sell to anywhere between a quarter and half of their install base. No offense to anybody who's a PlayStation fan, but the numbers I was able to find at my fingertips were Horizon Zero Dawn, 24.3 million, God of War, 23 million, God of War 2018, Marvel Spider-Man, 22.68 million. A fifth, a sixth of their total install base across PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. The reason why Nintendo is, people can choose to feel that it's emboldened, but the reason Nintendo makes these decisions or made this decision is because, from their perspective, the market telemetry indicates that this is potentially a price that the market will accept.
So let me just ask you, kind of piggyback what you said, Logic. It almost seems like you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong here, and please panel chime in as well. It almost seems like what you're saying is that the pricing decisions and things that they're doing are really aimed at their consumer base, right? The people that, and you mentioned Mario Kart. We know Mario Kart wasn't a new game on the Nintendo Switch. It was a re-release of Mario Kart 8, and it sold, as you like to say, Logic, you probably need to make Bonga. Yeah, Bonga. You got to make a t-shirt that says Bonga.
It's been 7 years since that game was out, and it was constantly in the NPD charts every month.
And it was a game that you have to imagine people repurchased.
Yeah, it was bundled.
Was it bundled at launch? I don't remember. I don't think it was.
No, I think a year after.
Yeah,
released, like December 2018.
But even at launch, it sold very well.
Yeah.
Give you another number. The attach rate for, listen to this, this is crazy. And this is where I think this goes back to an earlier point that perhaps you may not be the consumer for this particular product, right? In the sense of how Nintendo's approaching pricing of, and I say this in the sense of ecosystems, right? I look at these platforms as ecosystems. Like we talk about Apple, we talked about I don't know, Kofi or Nib, if you guys are in the Apple ecosystem, but you remember like the outrage over we talked about this earlier, Logic, when Apple first introduced $1,000 phone, people were like, that's crazy. And what happened? Again, I'm not saying this to justify price increases. What I'm saying is that there's probably there is I think something we need to acknowledge as consumers, that sometimes these decisions or these things that we see aren't, we're not that consumer group. This isn't for us. I think there needs to be that acknowledgement. Just like, when I see, not to pick on Nib, but Nib drives a Mercedes, I'm like, I don't want a Mercedes. I don't want to spend $80,000 on a sedan. That's just not, I'm not that consumer, but I'm not yelling at Mercedes for charging $80,000 for a sedan. Or I think, Nib, you have an AMG. Is that accurate?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the C-Class AMG.
Yeah, but I'm not yelling at Mercedes for charging whatever it is you pay for the C class. I just look, that's just not I'm not that consumer. I'm not who this is targeted for. But to go back to the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, it launched alongside the Nintendo Switch, March 2017. It had an attach rate of 102%. I mean, that is insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
102%. Who else does that in the industry?
Yeah, it's mad. I will just say one thing though.
Go ahead.
Again, I don't have an issue with it because fundamentally the market will decide, and I like quality.
True.
So I have
Yeah.
always been happy to pay for quality, even though, I do wish, as a human, I do wish prices were cheaper so I could save money. But at the
Absolutely.
same time, But the only thing I would say is it's interesting that Nintendo is leading the charge on these $80 digital, $90 physical games, when in terms of production cost and margins, their games typically are much less expensive than tentpole high performance titles. Even like, for example, like Tears of the Kingdom, as I can't remember the exact number, but I believe it's 1,260 something people accredited as having worked on it. Whereas if you look like at Halo Infinite or Last of Us or Spider-Man, or basically most AAA exclusive or multi-plat games, generally they tend to be made by 1,800 to 3,500 credited to working on them. Some of that obviously is outsourcing, etc., but they tend to have much larger budgets, and Tears of the Kingdom is actually the biggest one for Nintendo. Mario Kart 8 only has 260 people, I believe, credited to its development. Pokemon Scarlet, I believe, is roughly 700 or something. So, like production cost wise and the number of people working behind these games tend to be significantly less. And obviously, technically they don't have to necessarily spend as much time on the graphical side of things in terms of models and textures and whatever as well. So in that sense, yes, they're already highly profitable product line in games. Is just going to get even more immensely profitable from a margins perspective versus, say, what we get from Xbox or PlayStation.
Yeah, I definitely don't think you're wrong, Nib. I think there's explainability behind that as well. I think number one, I think my bad estimation was they didn't give reason. I felt that I may have said this earlier in the podcast. I felt they needed to give people a lot of incentive to get people moved over quickly to Nintendo Switch 2. They haven't really done that. There may be reasons for that. They may be concerned that tariffs, means that they know people aren't going to move over quickly. Supply chain, right? Raw materials and production pipelines may mean that they just can't get enough of the things out to get people moved over quickly. So they're not as focused on that. But from the demand side of the equation, these games rarely go on sale. There's no subscription path, no low cost point of access. There's no Game Pass. There's no PlayStation Plus. Like, if you want these games from a demand perspective, again, talking about the people who, like 50% of their install base who goes out and buys these games, then the only way to get them right is to buy them. There's no hardware rental program. So if you want these games, and particularly the Nintendo Switch 2 specific ones, you're going to have to buy a Switch 2. There's no ports to PC. So there's no cushioning effect, no dampening effect from people who go, hey, it's okay for me to wait. Or there's no games going to other platforms, right? Like if you're an Xbox fan, like there's no way to say, hey, that game's going to show up on PlayStation 5 or this game's going to show up on PC day and date. There's no Green Man Gaming or, codes or anything like that, right? So again, from a demand perspective, I just have to think part of their calculus is we sold Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to half of our fan base last time. We're probably likely to sell the same amount again over the life cycle of the Nintendo Switch 2. So, and people will probably pay $80 for it. That's the only thing that I can think of, is really, in their mindset.
Yeah, they probably believe they have to believe that their fans are going to pay top dollar for their IP, right? Their exclusives. I
have to be honest, like, for me personally, without, and this is just me, without like a tentpole Zelda or Mario, I'm not as interested. I think it's like was it Donkey Kong and Mario Kart is like the the ones they're leading with, which probably is, Mario Kart sells gangbusters. I'm sure that's going to be enough for many consumers, but for me personally, I like those, like the other kind of meat and potato titles. So yeah, for me, I'm still holding off, but from a hardware perspective, I do actually think it looks compelling, for the reasons you described earlier. With the features and with the upscaling technology and everything like that. Like, I was actually happy with the games on Switch, so to get them with that much higher fidelity and everything would be cool. But yeah, it's I'm indifferent on the price thing. Like, I think, given the kind of games they make and the production of the games they make, I do think it's a little bit cheeky, but at the same time, the desire and whatever is there, the demand is there for their titles. Clearly, look at how they're selling, and consumers keep telling us over and over and over and over again, not just in this sector but other sectors, they actually don't mind paying for quality. Like, if the product is high quality, the games are high quality, the phone is high quality, the friggin' laptop, tablet, whatever you want to call it, they'll pay the extra, as long as they're getting something good. And I think Nintendo has kind of captured that. Like, from a first party experience perspective, they really do make some of the best games in the world, and they are still that traditional model of, we're designing this from the ground up around one sole piece of hardware. Therefore, it might feel like we're drawing blood from stone, because when you play like a Tears of the Kingdom or a Breath of the Wild, it really does feel like that. When I was playing Tears of the Kingdom, there's me thinking, how on earth did they manage this on this shitty piece of hardware? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, the draw distance I can see, being able to fly all the way from the sky right down to the ground and see dozens of islands in the sky, and all this draw distance on the ground. Like, they really did, do the most with that, from an optimization point of view. So I am definitely excited to see what they can cook up on the Switch too.
Yeah, I think, if I'm thinking positives, I was mentioning a little bit before with BRAP, but seeing Donkey Kong again, my most fond memories of Donkey Kong, other than of course Donkey Kong Country, was the N64 adventure game that required the N64 expansion pack for better processing or whatever you want to call it. So seeing Bonanza, Donkey Kong Bonanza, absolute glorious. I am very supportive of seeing this title come back, and it honestly had me a lot more interested in Switch 2 than before I saw it. So I definitely want to throw that out there. The controllers being much more conveniently attached and disconnected from the sides, that works for me, because I kind of sit my Switch in a place where connecting the Joy Cons on and off with my two absolutely destructive children, it would be a lot easier if I could just have it work with magnets. So there are definitely perks. I will throw out a little bit of a thing I wish they had done is, I really wish they had called this the Super Switch and maybe gone with a coloring theme that was like the Super Nintendo or the Famicom. I think that would have been very cool. But the only other I think thing that bothered me was, even though game sharing will be kind of in this convenient, controlled family space, I did not like hearing that this game key solution could be more prominent in future Switch games. What I mean by that is, a lot of these cartridges could not have full game installs on the actual cartridge, but immediately require an internet connection to download the game. And the reason why I would have an issue with that is, I am a big fan of game preservation. I know this is a debate topic. I might lose to facts, but I really do appreciate when I'm able to keep a disc or keep a cartridge, whether it be, for example, I have a ton of games on Vita. I do own a Switch, and I own a PSP and PS4, PS3. Having those games on disc so that I can play them at any point. I can go back and play, like, um, Tales of Xillia. Right, currently Tales of Xillia is not available anywhere on physical, except for, I think it was, yeah, Xbox 360, I guess, but I own the PS3 version. Things like that, I wish Nintendo would stick with. But we'll see. Obviously, there's not a lot of confirmation on how prominent that will be. Maybe many games will be on cartridge. Apparently, for example, Cyberpunk will be on cartridge allegedly. We'll see. But just qualms here and there. And I say this in, I guess, in more detail because I am in the market for some sort of handheld. The PlayStation Portal wasn't exactly what I was looking for because I wanted something that could play games locally. The original Switch I own, but it's really not my go-to device. I still own a Vita, and that's really where I play a lot of my current JRPGs that I want to get to. But I'm looking for the next thing. I've played on the ROG. A good friend of mine has a ROG. It's pretty good. Not gonna lie. But I was holding out to see what Nintendo would do. And for me, I think the price to me coming out the gate, it might be something I buy at the beginning of next year, maybe summer of 2026. I'm not gonna jump quickly for this at this point.
So no interest in the Steam Deck?
Yes. I like the Steam Deck too. I would definitely consider it. When I saw that they had like a better version that they released, right? Didn't they release like a enhanced version?
There's a Steam OLED.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, there's a Steam OLED. I held out. I have nothing against the Steam Deck. I guess I just wanted to see what the landscape would be like. So if you were to ask me what I'd buy today, it would probably be a Steam Deck.
Yeah, I think that would. I don't know. That would personally be my recommendation.
Well, we should get an announcement of Microsoft's new handheld soon, right? Like,
no, Nib,
No?
we're not doing that.
No, the Asus one. They've already teased it, right?
No, I know. I just think I have a low opinion of that device.
No, you sounded like my wife. No, we're not doing that.
We're not going to talk about that.
We're not going to talk about that right now. Right? We're just my mental load right now. No, we're just not going to do it.
But no, that's a good point. And like this is my thing. I just mentioned this to somebody on Twitter. Like I get it. Mario Kart's $80. You had Mario Kart on Switch 1. You're mad and angry now because you've been priced out of the market. And what I said to her is like, look, I mean, like as an adult, right, you're going to grow and you're periodically going to be priced out of markets. I used to have an iPad Pro, right? I cannot afford an iPad Pro now, or at least I choose not to, right? I've had to make different choices. I now have a 13-inch iPad Air, right? I mean, and there's other options for me to have gone to. I could have gone with an Android tablet. I could have gone with a Kindle Scribe. I could have gone with a Remarkable, right? These things will happen throughout life. Like it's something weird going on. And yes, you get younger guys who are in chat. I'm going to blame it on the younger generations. There's something weird going on where it seems like there's a feeling that people have that like when they were allowed to buy something like young, that they expect that they're going to have access to that thing throughout their life. Like, no, like the world doesn't work like that. You will get priced out of markets. I'm a PC gamer now, right? Like there are like the things that I used to be able to do on PC, I can't do anymore, right? I have to make choices. Right now, I can't afford to buy a GPU in this current market. My literal consideration has to be, if I think I'm going to need to do a GPU upgrade, I need to start looking and researching and looking at buying a pre-built, and I need to get my head wrapped around what does that budget look like, and then start putting money aside for that. These are choices you have to make. Like being a consumer in a luxury market, and this is the other thing I expressed to her, this is a luxury market. This is not an essential need, right? This is not eggs and milk.
Yeah.
Right?
I put out a tweet earlier, actually, funnily enough. It was just a tongue-in-cheek thing. Like, it was, so the tweet reads, Switch 2, $449. It's games, $80 digital, $90 physical. For about $600. Oh. Now, obviously, you do not need any of those things, and there's other options as well. And then it was like the gif of the dude like contemplating suicide, and it's like the comedian, but it's like that has like 14,000 likes now, and I assume a lot of people feel that way, like, oh my god, like why is everything getting so expensive? But we need to get used to it because that is the way things are moving. And I can imagine this Asus Xbox handheld is probably going to be really expensive as well. Like, as far as I understand, the Asus ROG Ally X, which it looks like from the teaser, it will be based upon. That is what, $799 or something, or
Yeah, for the
$749? Yeah,
for the 1 terabyte version and
for the 1
$899
terabyte,
for the 2
yeah, and then
terabyte
the 2
version.
terabytes even more, yeah, and then
Who asked for that?
The people who didn't want to buy the $650 version, who
Xbox
wanted
One
more RAM and more
versus-
storage. Yeah.
Yeah, so so that is the way things are moving, right? Yeah, I don't know. We'll see next generation. Out of curiosity, what do you guys think is going to be the price of the PS6, and if Xbox make a new?
I'm thinking the PS. I think we're going to see $600 consoles now.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah.
I think 600 is actually reasonable.
You know, I think 600, and what's interesting. I know you asked a question about the consoles. Yeah, but the pricing of the $80 games for Nintendo Switch, I think I was taken aback at first because one, to me, $80, I've always associated 70 the higher tier price points for games associated with AAA games, right? These big blockbuster, high production value games. Nintendo's not going to have that, right? But then I was like, well, you know what? I'll pay $80 for another Legend of Zelda game. I'll pay $80 for Mario Kart World. I will. And then I was like, okay, well, that's so. But I think that's part of the conversation. It's like, wait a minute, $80 for Nintendo games, really? I think that's part of the conversation.
Well, the rumor is GTA 6 is going to be 100, right?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you that then.
So
if you
go ahead.
Like, is this? Are we going to see $80 games now soon from Microsoft and PlayStation, or is that going to happen once they release their new consoles?
Can I make an argument against just as a contrarian? I think that sometimes when it really depends on the game, but I feel like at certain times some games have chosen a price for their title that has greatly benefited them, and it has been less than $60. For example, I think games that sometimes land in the $50 or even $40 mark, and they're in the AA space, maybe the same level of fidelity as one of these Nintendo games coming out, it allows for a certain type of gamer to immediately buy where they might have waited for a sale. I'm thinking of things like Helldivers. I'm thinking of something like all the excitement around the Expedition 33, or something like Split Fiction. They just have chosen like a specific point in the market where to say this price works for us, and we're hoping that sales can maybe reach this number at this price. I'm sure that there's some calculation done for that, but obviously GTA kind of almost gets a free pass just because of their impact. I really think on a title-to-title basis, many publishers need to be very careful. I think if I don't know about Ubisoft, to be honest. I think Ubisoft, for some of their like traditional titles, like a Ghost Recon, I think they need to be very careful where they're pricing this out. They're probably having $100 option, right? Get all the DLC, play 3 days early, all that stuff. But staying, in a more safe area, I think that's much smarter. Because typically when, these publishers publish things, they get a ton of feedback immediately if their game is not perfect. And, GTA, they're just in another stratosphere right now. So they happen to be an exception, but I think a lot of titles can win from different price points.
I do think even from like, again, I don't know how much the game costs, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did cost $1 billion, really, because like if you look at GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, I think Red Dead 2, if I remember correctly, like 4,700 people are credited as having worked on it. And GTA 6 is a bigger production with, higher inflation and higher costs, rent rates, you name it, all their equipment and all their mocap and, just across the board production costs have gone up, right? Which is, I will say, as a side tangent, that is why I'm actually surprised game prices haven't gone up more and sooner. And I know people, it's not me being a corporate bootlicker, but it's just, again, doing the numbers. If you look at every other industry sector, whether it's, cars or mobile phones or whatever, they have protected their margins at a much more stubborn rate than games. Because if you look at, for example, like The Last of Us 2, right, $220 million project, and then the last game, 100 million. Horizon for Zero Dawn, if we go by IMDb, I think it was 110 million or 120 million or something, and then the new one is similar, like 200 plus million. So and that game hasn't necessarily sold much more than the previous title. Some games do, like God of War Ragnarok, obviously that sold much faster than the previous release. So did Spider-Man 2. But a lot of the games are kind of selling similar numbers, yet their production costs are 2-3 times greater. And actually, if you go back one decade, for example, Uncharted 2, I believe it had a production cost of 20 million, and then Uncharted 3 had a production cost of like 30 something million. So it's like, then when you consider Uncharted 4 cost 150 million, the production costs are far greater than they were just a decade or so ago. So $10 extra for games that are costing substantially more, even if they are selling more, some of them aren't. It's actually, to me, it was a small sum to pay given how much value proposition we're getting from a production perspective. But yeah, I can't remember where I went on the tangent. But yeah, GTA 6, that is going to be such an expense. It is a completely different stratosphere to basically every other game, because I don't think any other game is going to be close to that level of production or cost. So if they do charge more, it is going to be a completely different conversation.
And at least, the other thing is that company, they're not in pain right now. Sometimes, like, for example, Capcom, they completely reverse their fortunes. Starting with Street Fighter 5, and PlayStation kind of throwing them a bone in that whole exclusive part, and now they can't miss. Well, they've missed less. But very similarly, Take-Two or Rockstar, they're still printing money from the other game, and so I'm hoping. I don't know why I would hope against corporate profitability, but I would hope they wouldn't just go crazy and say, we're going to start with this really high price and then want you to buy DLCs and all these things. I really hope that they have a reasonably priced base game that can give you some features. I don't need them all. Maybe just the single player and some online. And then if you want to pay $100, sure, I get it. I do buy the top tier version of a particular JRPG series I love, but I do like the option of a lower price. So we'll see. I guess I could be wrong.
I mean, one thing I want to kind of talk about a little bit is, and I'm not picking on you, Russell, 13 December in the chat, but your comment is something that I see going around a lot, and I want to kind of pick at that thread. So Russell says, entertainment and leisure isn't only for the rich. The poors need to have fun. Also, gaming is for everyone. So that may be a joke, it may be tongue in cheek, I don't know, but I have seen that sentiment run around that there's a feeling of I'll call it entitlement, right? That every socioeconomic demographic should have access to gaming. And I'm not saying this to be mean, and I'm not saying this to be elitist, but what I'm saying is no. Or let me walk that back a little. Gaming can be for everyone, but to go back to what BRAP said, there are multiple entry points right into gaming. You can game on your phone. You can, if you can't afford to buy $70, $80, $90 games, you probably have a phone. You can buy a cheap tablet. You can subscribe to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate for $20, $25 a month, and you can access games via Xbox Cloud Gaming. You can buy a Logitech G for $200, $250. You can subscribe to GeForce Now at a lower price tier. You can buy older games. And this is a kind of a thing that seems to be weird to me, because like way back in the day, like there used to be gamers who did this, and people who lived in gaming like this. They would buy the last generation console when the new generation console came out, and they would play older games. Right? These things are available. What the capitalist market is not designed and wired for consumers to be entitled to is for everyone to have access to the latest and greatest games on the latest and greatest console, right? On a continuous basis with no price increases. That, and again, I don't say that to be mean. I say that to say that is an entirely unrealistic outlook on a capitalist market. That is just simply not the way that it works.
Can I throw some spicy hot take out there?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I've not been shy about this. Russell, I appreciate you. I'm sure you could be a decent guy, but truthfully, I'm one of those people who actually I'm the opposite. I sometimes prefer if things are locked off because I get better value proposition from my purchase. So if I buy a Switch 2 or if I buy a PS5, I don't actually care if PS4 owners don't get cross-gen games. You had your support already. I would much prefer that they be cut off and I get games designed from the ground up for the new console that I purchase. In a similar sense, I also don't mind exclusives. In fact, to me, they are pro-consumer, the kind of consumer I am, because the kind of consumer I am is someone who buys all the platforms and values quality above all else. Now, it doesn't mean that multi-platform games can't be better than exclusives or some exclusives can't be bad, but just on the balance of probabilities and data, if you have an entire studio and production working from the ground up, singularly focused on one piece of hardware, there's a much higher chance of quality or tech and graphics, polish or whatever, than there is with that same studio with a similar budget working on 5 or 6 platforms, right? Because they're not being spread as thinly. The other argument is, oh yeah, but they wouldn't have the same budget if they were working on an exclusive versus a multi-platform. Well, they would. Like, if you have a look at exclusives like The Last of Us, like Halo Infinite, like whatever else, tentpole exclusive, Spider-Man 2, I think is like 300 million or something. The reason they have production costs that match or exceed the majority of multi-platform releases is because they are not just developing these really expensive exclusives to sell the game. They are long-term investments to bring people into the ecosystem, and thus when someone is brought into the ecosystems, for that person to give a 30% cut of every digital transaction they ever make to the platform holder, right? So they're not paying 300 million for Spider-Man 2 to sell 20 million or 30 million copies, although that would be great too. They are also spending 300 million so that Spider-Man 2 is the reason someone buys a PS5 and then gives 30% of every transaction they ever make.
Yeah.
So the entire ROI is completely different. But yeah, me personally, I do enjoy exclusives, and I do not think it's a coincidence. I put a tweet out on this with the data. 58 of the top 100 highest rated games of all time are exclusives or were exclusives at one time on Metacritic and OpenCritic, right? 58%. And yet exclusives make up less than 10% of the total overall portfolio of games released on these systems, right? So they account for 58% of the highest rated games. They make up less than 10%. I think it's like 5 to 7%. Likewise, if you look at tech awards, whether you look at DICE Tech Awards or GDCA or NX Gamer or Digital Foundry or NAV GTR. Again, look at, since they've been running their tech and graphics awards, look at the winners every year. And again, I'm just going off my tweet, so I don't know exactly. But if I remember, it's 70 something percent of all the winners over the last like nearly decade have been from an exclusive. Again, that's not to say multi-platform games can't be more technically proficient or aren't often, but just that exclusives have a higher chance of it. So again, me being someone who owns these platforms, I want the best quality visuals, tech, etc. that is possible, and I don't mind paying for that. And exclusives or cutting off cross-gen games or whatever else affords that. So yeah, I'm sorry, you're not entitled to every game. And for people who have put the money in the system, sometimes it's better for them as a consumer to get this kind of focus on these platforms.
I mean, Hoodrich in the chat says, my only pushback is that people who've pushed a platform are now priced out, and that does suck. You shouldn't have to switch to Flash games on a cell phone. So Hoodrich, I don't feel that's pushback. I don't disagree with you. Where I disagree with people tends to be how they deal with it. Again, as I've mentioned, I've been priced out of the iPad Pro market. I am priced out of the GPU market to a certain extent. I used to be able to afford the highest end GPU, right? I can't afford that now. And now a 5070 Ti, which is not the high end SKU, it's like 3 GPU SKUs down, is a $1,000 GPU. Like, I'm priced out of that market. So, but I have to make choices. Your comment that you shouldn't have to switch to flash games on a cell phone, this is where I push back. I'm like, you're not. If you're priced out of the Nintendo Switch 2 market, there are several options. The PlayStation 5 digital version is cheaper than the MSRP right now for the Nintendo Switch 2. The Xbox Series S is cheaper. Again, I'm not going to get into a word fight over, whether or not that's a suitable substitute or that's a good product or that's whatever, right? But again, there are acceptable substitutes, right? There's Apple Arcade, right? And some of these lower end, again, phones and tablets that you can gain access to. So you're not being forced, what's happening is you're being presented, and I'm not picking at you. I'm just saying this as an example or for instance. What is happening to people is they are being presented choices that they don't like. And my problem when it comes to money is an objective, finite resource. When you are presented options that you cannot afford, having to entertain other options that's not optional, right? Like, there is no other way to deal with it. You can either choose to get out of the hobby, right? Or you can choose to find other approach paths to that hobby should you choose to stay in it. Those are your choices. Yelling and screaming at Nintendo in hopes or a belief that that's going to change anything, like, that's what I don't get. That seems to be an incredible waste of a human being's time. And for me, I do tons of research, right? When I'm priced out of a GPU market, I've spent tons of time figuring out what our alternatives are. Alternatives that I haven't considered before, like buying Radeon cards, which I have done before, but I hate doing. Right? But again, I am once again presented with a tactical situation where I have to consider that option. That option might require me to get off of Windows and go to a Linux distribution. Those are things I have to think about. That's what I spend my time researching. I don't spend my time yelling, grousing, and belly aching about it on Twitter. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kobe.
I was going to say that's a good idea, by the way. going to Linux. I'm sorry.
It's a hugely great, like, this whole thing about like mandating a Windows login to add install to like that. Oh. That's going to cause me to be out.
I'll throw up in my mouth. Sorry, I don't mean to change it. I was going to. Question for you, I guess, for the panel. And this might be me playing devil's advocate because I don't know if I would agree with this theory, but do you think that the transition from Switch to Switch 2 will be soft because the casual market may not recognize the difference between these two pieces of hardware like Wii and Wii U?
I don't think so. I don't think so. B, the other thing I wanted to mention to you when you were talking about the game key cards, I also think I've mentioned this theory on Twitter, and I won't go into it in huge detail. I think Nintendo is definitely getting its customers prepared to evolve over time to an all digital future, and they know that will be a problem, and that's why there are these strong incentives that are being placed in front of people to understand that that's coming.
So I agree with that. So this is a bit of a soapbox for me because yes, I import games. I also import used games through like the equivalent of eBay that basically only runs in Japan. And that market, at least for like PlayStation Vita or PlayStation like 3, 4, and 5 games and Switch and DS and stuff like that, it's amazing. It is amazing. And obviously it touches on the Japanese culture of caring for, valued items in this particular hobby. But I could get, a game from like 12 years ago, and the case, the manual, the art piece, the disc, it's just immaculate. And if there's anything particularly wrong with that, there seems to be some sort of honor system that many Japanese people use where they're very honest. If there's scratches on it, they don't want to lie or anything like that. So I say all that to say, if that market is disappearing and obviously with higher physical prices than digital in this enormous, well, I won't say enormous, but significant price increase does speak truth to what you're saying. Trying to prepare them. Japan, I think, will be one of the countries hit most because, like I said, their used market is so good. You can still find. I won't. I will say you probably can't find many PS2 games, but like Vita and PSP and DS, 3DS, some PlayStation 1 gems still very much available through it could be a Mercari. I mean, there's a bunch of them. And so yeah, I'll be disappointed if that market goes away because it's been really fun. Like you said, like if you can't afford a brand new game, go get a used one. And because I busted my butt and learned Japanese, I'm able to go get these games that I was never able to touch when I was much younger for a much more reasonable price, especially with the way that the dollar is over the yen. And so I would be very sad if that opportunity, goes away. But it is what it is.
Yeah, logic too. Kind of piggyback what you said about being priced out of the market and people kind of yelling at Nintendo. Again, I kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Like we don't do this with other consumer products. We don't yell at Nike. We don't yell at I'm trying to think who else. We don't yell at the car manufacturers.
Jordans.
We don't yell at we don't yell at Nike for Jordan. I mean, we don't do that.
Samsung, basically everything.
Yeah, we didn't yell.
Your
We
local
don't yell at
supermarket.
yeah, your local. Well, there we should yell. I mean, that's reasonable to yell at them
Yeah.
because food is a necessity. Gaming is not a
It's in the
necessity.
supermarket.
But no, but I think it's.
Have you seen the price of orange juice these days? It is a damn joke. Like, what the hell? They're even sneakier, in the supermarket, because what I've noticed they've started to do is to redesign packaging, and it reduces the milliliter quantity that you get, and it's their way of price cutting without actually doing a price cut. But to me, that's even more irritating.
Yeah, shrinkflation, I think they call it, right? Where you get less.
Literally, yeah. It's crazy. And they like change the shape of chocolates and stuff. Like now there's this chocolate bar that every cube in the chocolate has rounded edges. Like, do you think I'm stupid? Like, come on. Like, what is this? Anyway, whatever, tangent.
But I mean, but again, I think it's, again, we're not advocating. No one's here is advocating for, oh yeah, charge you more. What we're saying is that those things do happen. You're priced out, or you don't feel comfortable with the price point. With any other consumer product, you make a consumer choice. You either wait for a game to go on sale. You do like Logic mentioned, you do research, right? I do often, and I often question some of the outrage that I see on social media as relates to, particularly this Nintendo in the $80. I understand if it's fair to say, hey, you know what, that's not for me. I'm not gonna pay $80 for a Nintendo game. I don't have an issue with that. What I question is the sincerity at times of people being outraged, because I think people just get angry all the time at all things Twitter or all things social media, and I don't think that just happens in gaming, but I question sometimes the sincerity of that outrage, because again, if it's not for you, and I'm not saying that there aren't people that are going to be impacted by this. There are obviously people that might be priced out, and that's fair for those people to be, disappointed. Like what you just mentioned, Kofi. Look, you spent all this time learning Japanese. If you got priced out or something changed the way you're used to consuming, Japanese titles, yeah, I can certainly, understand that, right? But what I question though, again, is that people tend to, like Logic said, they're screaming at Nintendo, they're throwing grenades, but they aren't discussing solutions. I think that's the other thing too, as a consumer, when you're either priced out of the market, yeah, initially, if it's something that you've enjoyed, you say to yourself, yeah, oh my gosh, that sucks. I mean, I've been there as a consumer, but then you figure something else out. You figure out how to navigate as a consumer and how to figure out how to engage in whatever consumer product you were engaged in and see if there's other options out there. Or you talk about, like, I saw one influencer who's out there saying, yeah, I'm always going to champion value for gamers, but then not offer or speak to the solutions or things that are available to those gamers today. They are cheaper entry points into gaming. They are cheaper ways to buy games. You can wait for sales. You can do subscription services. You can, if you have a GameStop, you can trade in your games. There's opportunities for you to engage gaming in ways that we didn't have. I didn't have, at least growing up. The market's so different now.
This isn't me justifying it, but I remember when I was a kid, games were actually, I'm pretty sure, like 70 to 90 pounds. Weirdly, somewhere in the middle, they went back down in price. But because I remember, like Street Fighter 2, like we had to save up for a long time to be able to afford that one game. And my family already was not very pro gaming, like education, but it took such a long time for me to finally get hold of that. And I remember, it was like, I think it was like £78, which is actually more than games cost today. Again, that's not me justifying it, but it's like, I'm just trying to say that it's actually not like gaming has always been this super accessible thing. I understand like hardware may have been cheaper back then, but then do consider inflation and stuff as well. But I remember like oftentimes you would just buy that like, one or two games, those one or two games, and the rest you'd have to play out your friends, because there's no way you were, unless you were from a wealthy family, you just were not getting all these games that you could. And I certainly didn't have the options like BRAP was saying to access, trade in, or whatever games that you do today to sell and whatever. There was no eBay, there was no Gumtree. So in a way, yes, there's negatives, but there's positives as well.
And people who are running around like I'm trying to, so I don't want to offend anyone, but like if you're running around defending a brand and saying, congratulations to Xbox and blah 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 for giving free upgrades. Like that's not consumer advocacy either. Consumer advocacy is presenting 2 options, 3 options, multiple paths to make people aware. Like if you're running around saying, "Oh, I play on this platform and it's cheaper," that's not consumer advocacy. That's not consumer education. That's not consumer information. That's not consumer dissemination. That's still you championing and trying to prop up a brand and trying to do a victory lap, right? To say that your brand is better. And what you're entirely skating by is the fact that, first of all, you have a consumer base who, if they're complaining about prices, is because they are Nintendo fans. They don't, like, their disposition right now today is they don't necessarily want what's on Xbox. They don't want what's on PlayStation, because those IPs and those properties that are on Nintendo aren't on those other platforms, right? The design ethos and the approach. And if you are, if you're a big fan of a certain type of genre or a certain type of content, those games aren't there, right? So the way to go about it is, again, make people aware of what other options on the market are. Not this isn't the time to stand up and champion a brand and then try and paint yourself as the good guy because you think you're making people aware of other options or downplaying what Nintendo's doing.
And I think there's one individual who's done quite a bit of that, and I don't think they're being. I think they're being disingenuous. To your point, Logic, it seems like more of a propping up of a platform than it is. Hey, I agree. As a consumer, here are your options. Like, if you're going to claim that you're going to champion value for consumers, talk about those value options. Talk about that. Flesh that out.
To piggyback off that, what you're saying about those individual. I literally just made a tweet to Paris Lily about Game Pass. Now I see his Game of the Year lists. I see other journalists' Game of the Year lists every year, and I've been subscribed to Game Pass since 2017. I've been subscribed to PlayStation Plus. I've used the sort of like value proposition trick. So PS Plus, I did the PS Now. I think I stacked 7 years. And Game Pass, I did 2 bouts of the Xbox Live Gold upgrade thing. You could do it twice. So I think I paid like £37 a year for Game Pass. So I'm chilling. But the thing I realize, and I put out a game of the year list every year, usually 15 to 25 games. And what you see, and this is, I enjoy my Xbox as well, but I would say maybe like 5 to 15, 20% of the games in my list were on Game Pass. Some years, 10%, some years 15, some years less. And I look at these other lists, all these journalists that champion this service, and they're usually the same. What you tend to find is the majority of the games listed in their Game of the Year list are exclusives on other systems or multi-platform titles. Like, let's just take this year already, I would say probably Split Fiction, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Monster Hunter Wilds, and Assassin's Creed Shadows has a good chance of being sort of at the top of a lot of people's lists. Obviously, there's Avowed. But at the end of the year, to enthusiast gamers, and let's be honest, those are the kind of people that Game Pass is going to appeal to. It's not really going to appeal to people who only play 1 or 2 games a year. They're going to be cool just buying Call of Duty for $70 or buying FIFA for $70 because they don't need hundreds of games. They're not playing hundreds of games, so why would they need them? Especially for $220 a year. So it really is going to appeal to enthusiast gamers who want a lot of content and a lot of games to play or don't mind what they're playing. But to people who do care about what you're playing and want high quality games or the games that they desire every year, Game Pass is not a solution. Because like, if I take my 25 games and only 3 of them are on Game Pass, if I was to just subscribe to Game Pass as a means to save money, I would miss out on the vast majority of my favorite games every year, including my Game of the Year, because my Game of the Year hasn't been an Xbox title for over a decade. So that to me is not a suitable solution. Yeah, okay, you can save money on Game Pass, but what about playing the games that you love and that you desire and you want to play? That is fundamentally why we buy systems, right? To play the games that we're interested in and love, not just to save money. So to me, it's not a viable solution. I would actually be more inclined to say, look, buy a console, buy physical, sell your games privately after you finish them or whatever, try and get them on deals. Then that way, at least you can play those 15, as an enthusiast, that is, those 15, 20 games that you actually want to play at a lower cost, as opposed to playing 15, 20 games that you weren't interested in playing for a low cost.
So this is the gateway to, I'll try and make this a quick speech, right? About, what Nintendo's doing versus what the alternative is. So, and the impact on the industry and the impact on the market. I get it. Like what Nintendo is doing is a lot of stuff that people don't like. Totally understand it. I would hope that those people vote with their wallets and don't support it if they don't like it. But what I will also say is that the other scenario, right, is the use case that Nib is talking about, which is where there is a growing trend of people in the gaming market, buyers exert power in the gaming market. So when they exhibit behaviors, consumption behaviors that are not in the best interest of the others of us in the market, they are exerting power. And so the concern is you have a growing rise, a rise of consumers in this market who have as a priority low cost of access. And they are not concerned, at least as much as we are, about quality, about performance, about image quality. They're emboldened, right, further by influencers like Ryan McCaffrey, who says things like, "Oh, I'm certain 60 frames per second is concern trolling." I'm like, no, Ryan, we actually want great games that are highly performant, right? And we don't want games that are excuses at 30 frames per second, right? Which is a sacrifice that was made for a design element and implementation that a bunch of us don't care about. But the concern is that you have a low cost of access consumption business model on the market, and combined with an effort towards enshittification and choke point capitalism, whereby the suppliers who are trying to deliver high quality products are made out to be the bad guys and are forced to, instead of pushing towards high quality, stay in line with the notion of low cost of access, therefore keep the price of their products low, which they can only do by cutting corners on quality in order to stay within the envelope of the business deals they're being offered. You take those two elements and you converge them with a consumer who I say is rising in influence and number and are only concerned about low cost of access. Oh, you should have put your game on Game Pass. Good luck selling your game without it being on Game Pass. No thanks, I'll wait for it to come on Game Pass. Combined with the other behaviors that we see from lots of influencers, which is like the Xbox era guys who threw shade at Death Stranding, with this disingenuous pat on the back about, hey, great, you got to 20 million users, but you didn't get to those 20 million users until you put it on other platforms. Completely skating by the fact that maybe there are reasons that Kojima had to do that. Maybe like, it's amazing to me that no consideration was given that, hey, maybe there's some licensing deal that's associated with the use of the Decibel engine. I think if I were Sony and I gave you access to a proprietary engine for free or at no cost, or maybe I finance your gig, that maybe I would probably want an exclusivity window, right? Because you can't get that game done without me. So, but they give him a congratulations on that number and give him, but then slap him with the negative of, oh, but you're skipping platforms, our platform specifically, so we don't like it. Yeah. Combined with a lot of their other BS commentary that's in that clip. But I'm like, but the risk on the market, I get it. What Nintendo's doing isn't great, but the opposite thing isn't great either. That there's a force on the market which is encouraging a race to the bottom. That is the thing that I think is also not good for us as gamers and is arguably worse.
I agree that it's the worst of, like you said, I don't know if the higher price, I would consider it an evil, because if the games are great, the games are great. But the race to the bottom that you're describing with encouraging not getting developers the money they deserve, at least that's what I believe Game Pass does. I agree.
Yeah,
that is
I want to touch on this as well. Like, as much as I enjoy these services, I have to say deep down I am glad they haven't had the adoption. Sorry, I'm eating at the same time. They haven't had the adoption and the growth and penetration of the market that they have, because like let's just think like long term. Say people say Game Pass is the future, or PlayStation Plus, or whatever it may be, subscription services, right? As in with multi of games, like a multitude of games. If say the transition to like a subscription future did come to pass, and imagine the entire market is predicated on just accessing their games through a subscription model instead of buying them, because it's essentially conditioning your consumer not to want to buy games, as we've seen on Xbox. Even Call of Duty saw like an astronomical drop off in sales because people just play it on Game Pass instead. But say you condition your consumers in a broader sense to stop buying games and just essentially just pay them on subscription. Well, what happens to publishers and games? If their game is not on your service, their game and that studio and that production will essentially die, right? They will be unprofitable. But the problem is you do not need thousands of games on your service, right? There are thousands of games that exist on these platforms, and they all get a little piece of the pie. Instead, you really only need 300 odd games or 400 or whatever it is on your service, a finite number of games, and not like one every month. It's more like so they stay on for a period of time. So you've got thousands of games, only a couple of hundred or few hundred releases on your service. What essentially would end up happening is all the power would go to the platform holder or the service subscription holder, right? Now imagine you have countless studios making games, but if their game doesn't go on the service, they're going to be out of business, right? So they have to grovel and beg or hope that the platformer puts their game on the service, even though only a finite number of games are going on the service. And because if they don't go on the service, they're going to get squashed. They might be privy to taking on lower fees and costs, or lower licensing that they may want to take, because the alternative is death, right? If your game isn't on this, I'm talking about in a future where subscriptions are taking over. Either your game is on that service with that finite number of other games, otherwise you're out of business, right? So then essentially the platform holders can bully studios or creators or whatever and then the risk goes up. The risk factor of production goes up. So how do they compensate for that if you're not guaranteed to be on a subscription service? Well, then you lower the quality or cost of your game development, right? You churn out games that are less risk, don't cost as much. So even if they're not on the service, then you may not have such a fate. But point is, like, that to me is like a scary future. So in a way, I'm glad that consumers as a whole have kind of rejected that, and they're saying, no, it's all right. We're okay with paying money for high quality games as long as they're high quality games, and we will continue to invest in the platforms that we feel best provide them.
And what's key is, right, like, and I mean, what Nib just described is a really good description of enshittification and choke point capitalism, right? But and the other thing that I want to make sure it's clear, because this is where the Xbox fans get it twisted, is what I talked about was, I did not say Game Pass is the danger. What I said is that the danger is the convergence of those three forces: the subscription service, right, the low cost of access, combined with the greed of a corporation that is trying to insert itself between buyers and suppliers and be the be all end all and the pathway through which you have to go through to get to all of gaming, combined with the rising force of the consumer who has as a priority low cost of access, who gives things a pass as long as they come through that low cost of access, and who are actually driven to anger and outrage when things aren't available via that low cost point of access. Those are the three forces that, when they combine, become the perfect storm that drag the industry down, right, and incentivize that race to the bottom. That is a concern that I have, and quite frankly, that concern for me, I think also for Nib, right, for the people who are looking for high quality access stuff. That is the thing that is more of a danger to me and more of a concern to me than Nintendo charging. If Nintendo wants to charge $450 for a Switch 2 and $80 and $90 for games, I'm fine with that, because I'm just not going to buy them, because there's tons of other options that are still at high quality on the market. But when those three forces converge in the perfect storm that drag quality down and race to the bottom, it incentivizes the whole of the industry to compete based on the point of cost. What markets sell products where there is no product differentiation and compete solely on the matter of cost? Those are commodities, and I don't want to buy my games like pork bellies, right? I mean, so
No.
again, yes, what Nintendo doing isn't great, but we also need to keep in mind the other danger to the market, I think.
Yeah.
Well said.
And fundamentally, like, the market is dictating things, right? Like, influencers can push this service or that service to their heart's content, but consumers are saying, no, we value this or we value that instead, which is kind of cool. And I will say, like, one thing I do appreciate about the gaming industry and platforms and stuff is people often try to kind of, out of salt and cope, I guess, attribute the success of one platform or another to, like, branding alone. But as gaming continuously shows us, gamers themselves are actually quite fluid. So, like, the GameCube can be a flop or whatever, and then the Wii can be a success. Then the Wii U can be a flop, and the Switch can be a success. The PS3 can, lose market share, and the PS4 can gain it. Xbox 360 can do amazing, and then one generation they can be a bit. So, consumers, it's not really about the branding. What it comes down to is the product itself and the game, right? When PS3 started turning around shit, yes, they lowered the price, but fundamentally, from 2009 onwards, they had like a slew of high quality exclusives. They had Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, Killzone 2, 3. They had God of War 3, Last of Us, GT6, Infamous Second Son, you name it. Like, there was some, I think, what's the ones of the David Cage games? There was all sorts. There's a bunch of games. I think there's like 12 to 15 like pretty well received exclusives. Some of them that did really good numbers, even right through to the tail end of the generation. But the point is, like, it took that push from Sony to kind of reverse things around. If you look at the 360 generation, yes, they had a head start, but look at the quality of the games. Your Bioshock, Mass Effect exclusives, or timed exclusives, your Halo 3, your Gears of War franchise, like, they had games that you, from a gamer perspective, like you need those titles. They were so impressive, and yes, they were exclusive that they kind of cemented the platform. And then only towards the tail end of the generation did they kind of lose that steam, and they veered off into this Connect focus or whatever, doing the Nintendo chasing thing, and then it kind of floundered. So yeah, like fundamentally, I guess what I'm trying to say is the brand, that is a cop out answer. It's not the brand, it's not the logo, it's the games that they're producing and the IP that people insinuate or are synonymous with that company. Like if Last of Us wasn't amazing, people would not associate PlayStation with quality. If Mario and Zelda were not amazing, they would not insinuate that quality with the product. That is what you need. It's the IP and it's the quality of the game. So I think like it's very, very reductive and misplaced to just try and pin it on branding.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Nib. Before I wrap up the show, I want to ask anyone any other closing thoughts on the Nintendo price point, the games being $80. All right. Well, go ahead and wrap up the show. Nib, I know it's really late where you are. That's I'm trying to be
Yeah, it's let me have a look. 4:20 a.m.
yeah,
But
so that's why I'm like, wait a minute. I just looked at the time. I'm like, oh my gosh.
420. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, it's 4:20
yeah,
where Nib is.
I'll be
So
honest, man. I would have been up anyway because I was watching the markets, and then I was going to play some Assassin's Creed Shadows. So YOLO.
yeah, so but yeah, I want to thank everyone in the live chat for hanging out with us tonight. Really appreciate it. And also want to thank our guests this evening, Creative Kofi and Nib. Kofi, always a pleasure having you on. And I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do, let everyone know where they can find you.
Guys, yeah, you can still find me on Twitter. I am playing Dragon Quest and having a good time, but I'm also playing Monster Hunter Wilds. I didn't get a chance to talk about that, but as fans of the game might know, a DLC is coming out on the 4th, which I guess is like 2 days away, basically. And yeah, link up with me if you can find me. I'm almost HR 50. I think I'm HR 50. So yeah, not a very high rank, but not low. And I'm really good with the switch axe, and I won't die on you. So yeah, I'll see you online.
Which is important.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, Kofi, let me ask you: am I punishing myself? Is the problem me that I'm forcing myself to play Lance? I'm not a Monster Hunter person.
Oh, you know what's so funny? So I would have said yes to you, but a friend of mine who is more experienced in Monster Hunter than me, and I played World for 300 hours, but he said that Lance is like broken good. Like it's like one of the best weapons of the 14. So I would say you're not killing yourself.
I think I'm forcing myself to believe that it's just a very unexciting weapon. There's like the animations, it's just very boring.
Yeah. Wait,
Just
have you done the
weapon,
mount
dude.
attack yet? Have you done the attack where you can jump on them and stab them with it?
Oh no! I haven't progressed. I haven't gotten to the point where you're climbing on monsters yet.
I think it's a skill you can do already. I haven't used Lance in a while. It wasn't in World, but I think now that the regular Lance, not gun Lance, has like a mounting skill where you can like stab them from the top.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
You might have to go to the training room.
Okay, gotcha. Were you trying to say something? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I do think it's maybe not as flashy as some of the other weapons in terms of like visual flair and animation flair and stuff. But yeah, I'm bow. I think I'm hunter level 69. I think hunter level 69. And yeah, it's been a good time. I don't think I'm as high on Monster Hunter as maybe critics and a lot of people. I don't know how you guys would rate your experience so far. But don't get me wrong, I really, really enjoyed it. But I feel like maybe I out Monster Huntered myself because the more of these kind of games you play, and then Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter World, and it just like there was that overt familiarity for me, and that is a me problem. It's not a game problem, but it's just yeah, it was a bit too similar. Though I do appreciate the fact that they cut out a lot of the fat with like the smaller monsters and stuff, and they just said, look, do you know what, you've done this already, just do big boss after big boss. So I did appreciate that, but even then there was a bit too much familiarity for me, but still a really high quality game and worth the experience. Like maybe Kofi, maybe like because we're quite similar levels ish, and maybe we could actually run some hunts.
Heck yeah, man. I'm looking forward to that. And I probably would have felt that similar to you, but I skipped Rise. When I saw Rise, I was like, but one thing I'll say is I'm not the biggest fan of like getting on the sacred and it kind of doing the navigation of the world for me. I kind of liked World where I had to figure out how to climb up things and find secrets.
Me too.
Because I just hop on my sacred and hit up on the D-pad, and then I like sharpen my weapon or look around the room. It takes me anyway. That's a whole.
Brad, sorry to go off a tangent. I'm
sorry,
just,
Brad.
But that's a really good point because like I love Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom was my game of the year, but I prefer Breath of the Wild, right? And funnily enough, it's a similar thing of what you just described for the reason I preferred Breath of the Wild. The thing with Tears of the Kingdom, when you go up those towers and they kind of shoot you out and you can just paraglide to practically anywhere on the map, like especially when you get the boost high enough. Whereas you couldn't do that as easily in you just jump off the building instead of getting shot up into the sky. So I felt like the pursuit of locations in Breath of the Wild was much more organic and rewarding, because if I saw something in the distance, it would be an arduous trek and journey, and it would involve like calculating your terrain, finding things along the way, blah blah blah. It was almost like a Lord of the Rings thing where I finally got to something. There was this feeling of like joy and jubilation for that journey that I'd experienced to get there. Whereas with Tears of the Kingdom, I was just boosting around to wherever I wanted. And it's a bit like that in Monster Hunter Wilds, where, like you said, you just press the D-pad and it just takes you to wherever. There's no real
I'm not even paying attention.
Yeah, literally. I'm just staring at the visuals, but like there's no real player agency in getting to your destination. So I do think maybe you've highlighted there where what I missed is maybe that is one of the reasons that I didn't enjoy it quite as much.
All right. Well,
sorry, Brad.
Nib. No worries. No. I'm sorry. I was just typing something here. See, Nib, I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do, let everyone know where they can find you as well.
I'm just it's only Twitter or X, and it's just NIB95_. That's it.
All right. Somebody's asking, who's the Nib guy?
I am an AI machine. My tweets are ChatGPT.
Oh my goodness, that is too funny.
Yeah, that's what people say. I don't know. Just some random dude he found. He was like, "Go on then, come on in."
All right. He also says, "Bring back the Aussie bro." You mean Falky? Yeah, we haven't had Falky on quite some time. Falky. So Falky, but Falky's busy. He's been busy lately. I did try to get him back on, but he's been busy. That note, also want to give big thank you to Game Logic. Logic, and if you want to be found, if you do, let everyone know they can find you as well.
On the you can just follow me on Twitter, same name, Game Logic.
All right, sounds good. And I'm BRAP. You can follow me BRAP_podcast on X or Twitter. And here every I know we've done, I think, second Wednesday in a row, but we do typically go live on Friday nights now at 8:30, or I'm sorry, is it 8:30, 8 p.m.? Oh shit, I can't remember now. 8 p.m. Eastern time on Fridays. But again, because I'm going to be out of town again this Friday this week. That's why we did BRAP tonight at 8:30. But yeah, we're on Friday nights at 8 p.m. So come back with us next Friday. Come hang out with us, and everyone enjoy the rest of the week. Have fun playing video games, because ultimately that's what it's all about. Until then, we'll catch you next time. Thank you guys.
Thanks for having me, BRAP. Latest to the panel.
Thank you, Nib.
Good discussion.
Absolutely, always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one, gents.